catch Bethany. I'm taking it northwest. Yeah, I'm gonna head back to executive, and I gotta give my chief a call. What time did you get to the airport at like 12 today? What time did you get in today? 12? Alright, I'll talk to you in a little bit.
I have been dealing with this issue for absolute decades, and every time we feel we've moved forward, then we get yanked back. And unfortunately, the leadership at the top of our nation is fanning the flames and fueling the divisions.
Representative, as we continue to watch these images again of a peaceful protest, this is what we would like to focus on. What is your message to those people who seem, like you said, who are opportunists, who show up just to kind of cause chaos? We can't help but think that it just continues to take away from the peaceful message that's happening here.
Well, my message to the people who are opportunists is that they need to go home. They need to get out of the way, because these are life and death issues that we are dealing with. When their desire to have new tennis shoes or a new television set is so unimportant compared to the life and death of people in our country at the hands of the police department. And unfortunately, it is people of color that suffer this type of experience with police.
And what is it that you understand we need to do? Where do we need to take this? How do we make this change and not be back in this place?
Well, I tell you, we need to change the law. We need to change the law in states, and we need to change the law federally that essentially allow for a police officer to merely say that I was in fear of my life. Now, we have seen on video police officers shooting people in the back as they're running. How can you say you were in fear? Of your life, but yet they don't get arrested, they don't get convicted, and there have been just a small handful of cases over the last few years. We saw the videotape of the man in New York, Gardner, being choked to death on video. We saw Floyd. Being essentially choked to death on video. And you're going to sit there and have a debate as to whether or not a crime was committed? These are the kind of things that absolutely need to change. But I will tell you that the police unions have been brilliant in essentially passing legislation that makes it virtually impossible to charge. Being the office that's going to bring charges, and on every other day they're working lockstep with the police, then why is it a... surprised when charges are not brought.
Representative, again, focusing on these images here of peaceful protest. How long does this need to continue? How many times?
Go. have parking lots.
Do we have to continue to do this? And I'm not knocking it. I'm asking because it doesn't seem like the message is getting across. Is this unrest going to end when 3 more officers in Minneapolis are arrested, or are we going to continue to need this? I mean, it's unfortunate that we still need this.
It's not going to change until, number one, the law. Is changed. And number two, policing in the United States has changed. So the problem is that if you are talking about an affluent community, a predominantly white community, the police are there to protect and serve. When you are talking about inner city areas, low income areas, the police are there as warriors. And we have to change that.
throw them in my car. Do me a favor and put this helmet in your car also. I don't know if I can put this over. I don't know if I can wear the gas mask.
Mentality. Numerous police officers have told me that they deal with rookie officers when they're ready to graduate, and they will ask to go to South Central so that they can kick butt. Now, what kind of mentality is that to address a community? If that's the way you view the community, then why are we surprised? So the culture of policing needs to change. The law that governs policing needs to change. And we need to keep up the pressure in our communities where affluent communities say, you know, we don't believe that this should happen on the other side of town. 2 miles away, there was an instance in New York when the police department were giving citations to young African Americans and Latinos because they weren't wearing masks in the same city. The other side of town, white individuals were sunbathing and the police were handing out masks. That's the type of conflict and contradiction that creates the rage that sends people into the streets.
And what about the militarization of police? I mean, we've seen that change dramatically over the last 20 years, where we see even the smallest departments across our Our country have weapons and gear that we would just never think a police officer would need.
Well, I will tell you, as a member of Congress serving on the Foreign Affairs Committee, I interact with our military a lot. And sometimes when I see some of the police in our communities, I can't tell the difference, except for maybe the color. Of the uniform. So once again, if you view a community like you are on foreign soil and you're fighting an enemy, then why are we surprised? That the community reacts the way it does. So I don't believe that you need military equipment in our neighborhoods. But if that's, I mean, could you imagine tanks rolling through Beverly Hills? The only reason they'd be rolling through Beverly Hills would be to arrest people on the other side of town. But a police situation would never be handled that way in an affluent area.
And now we have activated the National Guard and put into place curfews. How long do you think we're going to be in this situation? We've just seen cities extend their curfews, starting curfews earlier now, 4 p.m.
Well, I am certainly hoping that the National Guard will be leaving soon. I am hoping that they will not be needed. I am hoping that the looting that we see stops. I am hoping that we are able to get back to focus on the real issue, fundamentally changing policing in our city as well as in our country.
And I understand we have our own Conan Nolan with us at this moment. Conan, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can. So, Congresswoman, if you don't mind, nice to hear from you.
Thank you.
It sounds, though, that because we've heard from Connie Rice, the civil rights attorney who sued the LAPD before and is being brought in on tactics, on actually in figuring out who the next police chief would be when Charlie Beck was retiring. This is a city that says it has made progress with the LAPD, and they've changed the culture. But based on what I hear you say, they haven't done that enough, or you're not convinced.
No, I was referring to the national picture. I mean, even though it's difficult for some of my friends who are younger to hear this, policing, has changed significantly from the days of...
Yeah, I just want to make a quick correction. This is, we moved down to Walnut Street. So this is Walnut Street, right near Rittenhouse Square. Do you want to show you that the fire department is here trying to put out this fire next to the Wells Fargo Bank that's abandoned?
Daryl Gates. If Daryl Gates was the chief of police right now, he would be arguing that Floyd's veins in his neck were different than normal people. I'm sure you recall when he stood up at a press conference and literally said that, and said that's the reason why the chokehold kills people. I do believe we have changed in Los Angeles. We've not changed enough. but change has happened. We still have police-involved shootings. We still have people that have died at the hands of police that are questioned, and we still have a situation in Los Angeles where the police are not charged. But to say that it's the same as it was 28 years ago is just not accurate. But I was referring to the national picture. And what happened in Minneapolis is a perfect example. The officer that killed Floyd has been involved in officer-involved shootings before. He's had numerous complaints of excessive force, but yet he remains on the force. And a couple of the other officers that were there that were complicit, that were facilitating the murder, also have that if you have a bad apple, that bad apple needs to go, and that bad apple shouldn't just move from one town to the next and continue to be a police officer.
True. We should also point out, though, that policing is a local jurisdiction issue. We don't have a national police force. We do have the FBI, but it's the responsibility of different municipalities. And it seems to me, and I'd like your focus on this, that, again, there's a disconnect. between what some police departments and some cities are aiming for, are trying to do, and they pay the price of departments in other jurisdictions, in this case thousands of miles away, that may not be where we are. I don't think there's any question about that. And they haven't even outlawed the kind of procedure the tactic. You know, we talked with Errol Southers, from USC, who's an expert in counterterrorism. He's a former academy trainer who says the kind of thing that we saw in that episode of Minneapolis is not policy anywhere in Southern California. You're right. Daryl Gates talked about the chokeholds and referring to saying normal. They have a smaller windpipe than normal people. We remember that, but that was decades ago, and yet it looks like cities across the country are linked together by the internet and the globalization of information, so that you have a problem officer and several officers in one city will result in looting thousands of miles away.
Well, absolutely. And, you know, you have a mayor of a city in Mississippi who said he didn't see anything wrong with the tape at all. He didn't understand what people were upset about. And he said that, he didn't believe he died because he had his knee on his neck. He probably had some underlying health condition. What is that? That is the mayor of a city who basically said it was no problem. And people have to understand that black folks are feeling like it's open season on us. If you're going to look at the extreme disproportionate death rate from COVID and the lack of a response federally to the fact that we've had over 100,000 U.S. citizens dead, and a large percentage of those are African American or Latino, if that's the leadership that we have at the top, if we have a president fans the flame and invites his right wing, many of whom are white supremacists, to come out and attend the rallies. I'm sure you heard that yesterday. He invited the MAGA folks to go and said that the MAGA people loved black people. How insulting can you be? But if that's the leadership we're experiencing right now, we should not be surprised by any of this. But on the other hand, we have 158 days to the next election.
Representative, is there anything that the president could say or do right now that you believe could help?
Well, I think that when he called for a DOJ, Department of Justice investigation, that potentially can help. Now, I have to tell you, just a little skeptical considering who the Attorney General is. But, you know, those are career staffers, career attorneys. So that might help. But many times I think it's best for the president to say nothing, because when he starts to say something, it never comes out right.
Right. And Congresswoman, I have to ask you, you know, one of the things I personally think of when you look at the record of the officer who was directly involved in this killing in Minneapolis is that departments, it would seem to me, at some point have to see problem officers as civil liabilities, that it's going to cost the city not in treasure as well as in blood and treasure to keep individuals on the force. But to your point, you say that police unions have been expert at keeping some of these officers on the payroll. We should point out, though, that the Police Protective League for Los Angeles came out with a strong statement condemning what happened in Minneapolis and saying that they actually put other officers in jeopardy as a result of the conduct of their behavior.
And I will tell you that over the years, the Police Protective League has changed considerably to what it was like under the days of Daryl Gates. Again, I'm responding to the national situation, and specifically in Minneapolis. But aside from the civil liability, if I'm running an organization, I don't want anybody in my organization that's a murderer. I don't want anybody in my organization that treats people like they're animals. So it's also at the top. It's not just about the unions. It's about the leadership of that particular police department. Oh, how can you accept that? Now, leaders of other police departments said that if any of their officers believed that that was appropriate behavior, they wanted them to turn in their badges. That's the type of leadership that is needed.
And we just want to remind our viewers as we continue to talk to the Congresswoman. It's 3 o'clock right now. We're on the air. Breaking in because of this news, we're having a peaceful protest here and across cities in our area. Santa Monica is one of them. That's what we're looking at right now. But the situation turned unfortunate there at the Santa Monica Place Mall when we began to see looting. Several stores had their windows smashed in. We saw looters breaking through the barricades that had been set up. Fences were put up there at the mall, and they smashed through and got into that mall. And we're seeing running out of stores carrying things, just as we have seen the past few days and saw last night in the Fairfax district, taking handfuls of items and taking them sometimes to waiting cars and leaving. This is not what we want to see. And I would ask the representative, how do we stop this sort of thing? This is not quell the anger. What change needs to be made so that people don't respond this way?
Well, but I do think you have to make a distinction. I mean, not everybody that is out protesting is protesting are protesting at all. And I do believe that when you see what you were looking at, that's not protest. Those are people committing a crime.
But why? Why are they doing it? How do we change that reaction?
I think that's a crime of opportunity. They know that there is, the ability for them to go and do that now, whereas they know they couldn't have a situation. So, I mean, that's a question like, why do people commit crimes? And we need to get to the root causes of that, but I think it's very important to distinguish the looting that is taking place in Santa Monica. That is not a form of protest. That has nothing to do with Floyd, and we have to understand that those are people that are just opportunists. They're doing it because they see an opportunity to commit a crime and a high probability that they will probably get away with it.
And too often, Representative, we keep seeing that message being stolen by those people who are stealing items from these stores. It's really not fair to the people who are protesting peacefully in front of officers like we're seeing right now on the streets of Santa Monica. I want to ask you, look, we've seen the changes, as you mentioned. We are not, the LAPD is not the LAPD of Daryl Gates that ended 28 years ago. That comment about chokeholds 38 years ago, in 1982, it was awful. I grew up in Burbank. I've seen a major cultural change within the police department there in my time growing up there. How much of this needs to be, there are a lot of good officers who go out on the street every day, who do good community policing, who are out there for the right reasons. How much of this needs to be a lot of those officers checking each other when they're out in a situation like we saw in Minneapolis?
It always needs to be about that. There's also the culture that needs to change where if a officer knows that there's one of their colleagues is abusive, they need to step forward and turn that person in. So I think that internal to the police department, again, it's not the police department of the 1990s, but there's still a lot that needs to be done. I mean, frankly, the police department needs to be a little more diverse in terms of including African-American officers, and that's something that we can all participate in. But the change in the mentality of the police, the way it is different on one side of town and the other, it is better than it was in the 1990s, but it is still not where it should be. So you still have rookie officers graduating and wanting to go to South Central so that they can kick butt. Anybody that has a mentality like that should not be involved in my community. And frankly, I think that those officers that are in charge, when they know that that warrior mentality is a part of their department, if they're not going to accept it in Beverly Hills, then why the heck would they accept it in South LA?
Representative Karen Bass, we appreciate your perspective and your time. Thank you so much for joining us as we continue to follow these protests that have been happening this afternoon in the city of Santa Monica. That's what you're seeing right now. We believe we have Gil Levis overhead this protest in News Chopper 4 Bravo. Gil, again, This is what we've been wanting to focus on, what we would like to focus on 100% of the time, this peaceful protest in front of officers. Unfortunately, just a few blocks from Ocean Avenue here are people who are looting, who are ransacking stores, who are causing crimes that are taking away from the message of what this protest is all about.
That's right, Jonathan. There's the peaceful group here on Ocean Avenue near the pier, and one street to the right is the Santa Monica Place, where we watched earlier looters go through the mall and get into stores and taking merchandise. The police are back on scene here, and they have it secured for now, but still a lot of looting that's been happening in the surrounding businesses. I'll come over here to 4th Street, and we're going to move the helicopter over there to take a look at that van store right on the corner. If Jim, you want to go forward, we can get that shot. But when we first arrived, we did see looters coming out of the Bloomingdale's at this corner, and you see the police officers have secured it once again. They had made at least one arrest that we witnessed, and but then the looters made their way out towards this area here off of Broadway and 4th, and then into the shops there, continuing up 4th Street that were looted as well. So the big scene that we saw earlier was here at the van store on this corner. We're going to get around to that side. We saw multiple cars pulling up and people jumping in with merchandise, much like what we saw last night as well. And here's a group that's just crossing the street. It's really chaotic right here. You see it's very dangerous for those people to be crossing in front of those cars. Those cars just not stopping for anybody and trying to get out of the area here for whatever reason. But you see as we continue here up north on 4th Street, you see a large group there on the corner, and it seems like there might be more around the corner. We'll get there in just a second.
Yeah, these just look like people who are out enjoying right now. It's we don't see those groups of people going into the store anymore. Are you hearing of any more looting anywhere in the area? It would be nice if we're not hearing about it, as we just talked to the representative. This is not about the demonstration. These are people creating an opportunity, crimes of opportunity, just to go in and loot.
And Kathy, we'd like to remind our viewers.
Well, there's some people running right now.
We'd like to remind our viewers that the city of Santa Monica has instituted a 4 p.m. curfew. We are less than an hour from that taking place, meaning it will be unlawful for these people to be in the street, which will change tactics dramatically for police in the way that they can approach some of these people who are looting. It will not be unlawful for them to be out and about in this area. Again, that curfew instituted by the city of Santa Monica, expecting it to take place in less than an hour now at 4 p.m. Move further up. It was initially 8 p.m. Now we're going to 4 p.m. and that's going to change things hopefully in the terms of police being able to kind of control this situation, this looting. It's incredible to me also, Kathy, that we're back here. We've been off this scene for maybe 20 minutes or so, and yet it still looks the same as it did 20 minutes ago. People are coming in and out of stores in this area. I believe it's the intersection of 4th and Broadway. That van store just ransacked earlier today.
Yeah, absolutely. We saw a lot of people going in and coming out of that store, carrying boxes, jumping in cars, getting away. Here come more people out of that same area right now, still taking things out. It's hard to believe that there was anything left in there.
We did see that one vehicle that had its license plate covered, and again, almost like they had strategically planned to come and loot. They wanted their license plate covered, and we saw a bicyclist come up, and here's the video there. A bicyclist came up and actually ripped the covering off the license plate, only to be attacked by someone in that vehicle. Luckily, the cyclist appeared to be okay as he rode off, and the person got back in that car and quickly tried to get away from that scene. Someone just, we don't recommend this doing this, but someone trying to take it off.
Yeah, he ripped it right off, and he got it off, but he didn't get away scot-free because he got slugged. That looked like that could grow a little bit intense, but we're still watching here with Gil Levis, who's been over the scene in News Chopper 4 Bravo, watching the different businesses that we've seen. It started, was it the Nordstrom and then the Bloomingdale's, and the police went in there. They were in the mall at least twice that we saw since we were on the air, and yet we're still seeing some of these corner businesses being looted, and at least one eyeglass shop.
That's right, Kathy. We're looking again at the vans here, but that's exactly the order that we witnessed. That it was the Nordstroms that brought us here for the looting. We saw the people coming out of Bloomingdale's, then the Vans shop here, and then the optometry store down the street. So it just continues here at the van store. You see cars pulling in. Very dangerous. It's very erratic driving as people pull into the curbside. We watched one individual just a moment ago going up to this vehicle with merchandise that's parked there just to the east of the van store. But again, it's just chaotic scene down here in certain parts. Now, just again, 1 block away, or 1 or 2 blocks away, is the peaceful protest that's happening on Ocean Avenue.
Gil, you know, we can't help but think that officers in Santa Monica are stretched thin, right? They're blocking and trying to protect the 3rd Street Promenade, which remains closed. They're allowing people to peacefully demonstrate over there on Ocean. And then you saw a good contingency of officers at Santa Monica Place trying to protect the stores in that mall and make sure more people don't run in there. Have you heard anything about other agencies, outside agencies, coming in to assist? We also know, of course, the National Guard has been deployed to Los Angeles County to assist as needed.
I have yet to see or hear about any municipal police departments assisting here, or the sheriff's department for that matter, but there is a LAPD airship overhead that is assisting the officers with what's going on. Here goes more people out of the van store, throwing items right into that vehicle, and they're going to jump right in and take off. So that's what we're seeing, and really at the top left corner, it's out of the picture right now. I'll follow the car, but I'll show you as I zoom out, that intersection there, that corner there, that's the Santa Monica Place Mall, and that's where officers are currently securing. And here goes a car that just loaded up from the vans, and they're going to go right by the officers that are stopped there at the one of the entrances where the officers were securing it. It looks like maybe those motor officers have moved on, but certainly at the Bloomingdale's there's a line of patrol cars that are stopped here, and that person is just going to drive right by those officers, and they have no idea that what just happened right down the street.
All right, joining us on the phone in just a minute. We'll see if he is there. We have Sid Hale. He is an expert in law enforcement. Are you with us right now, Sid?
Yes.
Okay, what can you tell us about how police are policing this situation? If you have been watching, we are seeing looters going in and out of that mall there, the Santa Monica Place Mall. And what they're doing is in a coordinated effort, driving up cars, getting out of the cars, loading up boxes, as many as they can carry, jumping in the car and driving off. Some of the vehicles with their license plate covered. How do police handle a situation like this where they have a huge mall and then at the same time they have this peaceful demonstration going on the other side?
Well, that is the problem. What happens is that we're overwhelmed. So as a result, our focus of effort has to shift from enforcing the laws to keeping the peace. And so as a result, it means that some crimes are going to go, I don't want to say unpunished, but we don't have the ability to arrest. Now, I will say that if we have evidence, and we usually get a lot of evidence, and particularly this guy that you see is removing the plates, people will send these in after the riots, and a lot of our arrests occurred after the riots, and most of our recovery of property occurred after the riots when people actually gave us enough evidence to complete the investigation. So they're not getting away with it with impunity, even though it appears that way.
Yeah, it looks like license plates, only to take them off. Didn't want to be spotted probably by officers on the ground trying to hide their license plates, not realizing that we're shooting their license plates up from our chopper up above. Sid, this is Jonathan Gonzalez here with you. We appreciate you joining us. And, you know, yesterday before the National Guard was called in, Mayor Eric Garcetti was asked, and he had mentioned, look, this isn't 92. We don't anticipate calling in the National Guard. Obviously, a few hours later, that changed. But as you're watching what we've been seeing over the last few days or so, and knowing that you were on the ground in 92, how do these two different incidents compare, both of which starting with a brutal police arrest, in this case ending in a death in Minneapolis?
Well, there's more similarities, sadly, than there are differences. One difference I have noticed, though, is that the crowds or the mobs tend to be more confrontational. Now, the interesting thing is that you're talking about these people that are looting. I need to make a couple comments. One is those aren't protesters. Those are thieves. Yeah. They were thieves before the protest and the incident, and they're going to be thieves afterwards. So as a result of it, they have as much to fear from the people that are legitimately protesting as they do from the police, for the simple reason is that they are going to be providing the evidence. And so a lot of these are going to come out after the fact.
Yeah, it was interesting because we saw a man on a bicycle actually rip the license plate cover off the car. Unfortunately, people kind of taking it into their own hands and doing what they can. So I'm sure you're right. We will see a lot of that. And now, these days, everyone has a cell phone and a cell phone with a camera, a very good one, so you can document some of these things.
Yes, exactly. That was one of the things I was just going to suggest. Rather than be confrontational, which is just going to create problems, especially violent problems, simply get us the evidence and send it in. Now, we're going to need a witness. Normally, we're not allowed to admit film without somebody testifying and amplifying where it occurred, when it occurred, and how it happened, and things like that. But all we really need is a license plate, and if you've got footage, so much the better. But do it from a distance and do it from safety.
Sid, we can't help but stress, and thank you for pointing this out. This is taking away from a very important message that's happening literally 3 blocks away on Ocean, where there is a peaceful protest of several hundred people going on. And as we continue to see these images of looting, how much does this, impact what the protesters are doing and how that's being policed, knowing that this is happening just a few blocks away?
That's frustrating. What happens is that you're looking at 2 different groups here. One is a crowd, one is a mob. A crowd is actually under the constitutional protection, and we are required to assist them in legitimate protests. Now, in some cases, it gets a little bit carried away, but we usually tend to be very lenient on it as long as there's no violence. The other group are not protesters. Those are thugs and thieves. The problem is that they steal the resources. So we're caught in this tactical dilemma between protecting the legitimate protesters and trying to enforce the laws to protect property. And so as a result of that, usually the senior incident commander, but often the ground commander, the deployed commander, has to decide where he or she is going to deploy their forces. Typically, that is on the side of public safety. And so although this is reprehensible and repugnant as far as the thefts are going, it's the least of the 2 responsibilities. And so personally, I think they made the right call, although I know that it's going to grind on them.
Sid, how much does the curfew help the officers who are patrolling this area?
Dramatic. I couldn't even begin to tell you. As a matter of fact, when they passed the curfew in 1992, on the last riots, the last big riot that I was in, the deputies nicknamed it reasonable cause looting, because the people that stayed out after the curfew were no longer under the protection. They were an unlawful assembly, and we could arrest them for that alone. And that solved so many problems. And with that, I will just add that people that aren't even protesting, and I know this is a huge inconvenience, particularly when we're talking about curfew that starts at 4 in the afternoon. You can't imagine how much better, how much that facilitates our ability to redeploy resources and deal with these thugs and the looters. And so we're really hoping, and I'm obviously not speaking for any department right now because I'm retired, but from a law enforcement perspective, we're really hoping that the community will get behind the curfew and just stay home for this, which leaves us with the people that are breaking windows and stealing property and fighting with each other, and let us deal with those entirely.
Sid, tell us a little bit about your background, what your expertise is. We understand you do have an expertise in non-lethal force, and then tell us more about when you believe police should use that.
Well, yes, that has been my interest for, well, now it's almost 50 years. When PCP, when it hit the streets, it made every non-lethal option available to us instantly obsolete, because the vast majority are pain compliance, which means that they induce pain to achieve compliance. The only two that really don't, even to this day, are tasers and pepper spray. The rest still work by pain. And so as a result of that, I began studying it, and I started writing some things on it, and in short order, it went global. I ended up teaching all over the world and still do. There's a huge amount of it.
Unfortunately, we have to go. We thank you, though, for your expertise in explaining that and giving us your insight into what's going on and how authorities are able to police this. Thank you, Sid Hale.
And as we're watching News Chopper 4 right now, we're seeing what appears to be an REI getting broken into. Can we go up to News Chopper 4 right now and see? Gil, are you still with us?
Hey, Jonathan, it's actually Eliana up here in News Chopper 4 Alpha this time. Yeah, no problem. Gil just left to go capture something down in the Orange County area, but we are looking at the REI store here on the cross of 4th and Santa Monica, where, as you said, there are looters going in, and here's an additional person coming up right now. They broke the glass there on the doors, and they're going in there. We've seen plenty of people come out with all types of recreational equipment, mostly bikes. So we've seen them going there for bikes. REI has all sorts of sports equipment in there. And based off of how many things we saw them come out, I'd be surprised if there's more things in there to pull out. But just like that, additional people coming out with more merchandise.
And Eliana, are you seeing any police in this area? It appears like a free-for-all right now.
Let me double check for you, Jonathan, but at this point it looks like there are no officers on scene.
All right, we're going to ask, right now we are continuing to follow what's going on, people breaking in, coming out with merchandise there. This all started when we went on the air, started following this peaceful protest that was happening in Santa Monica, and now we have seen the looting of shoe stores and now this bicycle shop, people in taking bikes right out.
Yeah, Kathy, we've seen people come in and out of the store there. They continue to go in there. The word is out, and there you go. There's one protester who doesn't want these guys messing up all of they have worked so hard to assemble here in the Santa Monica area. This was a peaceful protest. It's how it all started. And you see this one individual there in the blue jeans and the black shirt. He doesn't want this looting to continue because it hurts the cause. So you saw him try to take that looter down, and it prevented at least that person. But unfortunately, he's only one person, and there's plenty of looters. It's unclear how well he's going to be able to hold some of these people back.
This is just a scene that continues to unfold here. An unfortunate scene, as you mentioned, Eliana, taking away from the message happening just blocks away. That's something that we want to continue to stress, that this is not the peaceful protest that continues to go on just a few blocks away, that these are people who are here to simply steal and loot and ransack. We want to apologize for some audio comments you may have heard on this broadcast by a caller. These are people who have come to simply steal, and we do see people now, Kathy, time and time again now, kind of trying to intervene in this situation.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of people do that. Again, we saw the person who ripped the license plate cover off and did pay a price because he got socked in the face. But again, yes, we don't qualify them as that. These are people who just are taking advantage of a time of opportunity and going in and taking things, and we do apologize for the use of certain restrictions of these people. Again, most of the people out here are demonstrating for a cause they truly believe in. They are here with the best of intentions. They have gathered. It has been peaceful. It has been a very good day. We have heard a lot of positivity placed on the city of Santa Monica. The promenade is clear. Police have done a good job. Mostly, this has been a good day. But again, for a few people, a time of opportunity, and we have seen that. It's been the same thing that's been going on for the last few days, and that is just what it amounts to.
And it's unfortunate, Kathy, because these are the images that we feel forced to show right now, to give a perspective about what's going on in Santa Monica. We would really rather focus on the images that are happening just a few blocks away, that peaceful protest that does continue. other thing I want to point out is that this is now at 4th and Santa Monica, as we heard just Eliana say just a second ago. Really, most of the looting has been kind of happening on 4th Street, really within a 2-block radius between Santa Monica and Colorado. We also saw some at 4th and Broadway, and so it's really just 2 blocks, and yet no police activity in this area. We did see police over at the Santa Monica Place near 4th and Colorado, but no police in this area. You know, Kathy, at moments we would see people just randomly run in a certain direction. We would assume the police were there. We haven't seen that here in the last 5 or 10 minutes.
Yeah, it was interesting because we would see them take off all of a sudden and just scatter, and then you'd think that an officer was close by with a patrol car or like something, you know, to make them do that, but then we really wouldn't see anything. What strikes me is interesting, though, is they see the police helicopter over them. They see our helicopter, so they know that there are eyes on them, and they've seen the police presence. Certainly, they know the police are in the area, and yet they're still going in and taking items out of these stores. Look at this, we see some officers right here on the street. What's going to be this that we're talking about earlier?
Kathy, this is going to be Ocean Avenue. This is the peaceful protest. This is the reason why people are out here. They are still calling for an end to police brutality and to seek justice in the death of George Floyd. These are the people that were out here earlier today walking the streets of Santa Monica, and a lot of them have now just sat down here on Ocean Avenue, really not causing any problem. They're still waving their signs and still trying to get their message heard. And some of them are actually walking away as we speak, headed closer to the ocean.
Yeah, I wonder if there was an announcement made about the curfew, or, you know, if they've been told somehow that this curfew is going to be going into place soon. You see officers there on the left side marching in. So it makes me wonder, people starting to take pictures of that, of the officers moving in. So we are about 35 minutes away from that curfew going into place. We'll have to see what happens here, if that crowd continues to disperse or if anyone stays behind.
Yeah, it looks like we lost about half of the crowd there in just a matter of about 30 seconds, but most of them seem to have come off to the side of the road. So perhaps there was some sort of announcement that was made by the officers that if they didn't clear the roadway, that they could be arrested. But you see, most of them, at least half of them rather, are still sitting down in the middle of the street. There is one person who is speaking to the crowd. You see them clapping in regards to what that person is saying. But this group is actually a lot larger than what we're seeing here. There's a secondary group, and I think they're just a little further way down, and there's that second bunch of the group. They're just to the south. They're just south of PCH. So this is where we see this other half of the peaceful group. There's one van there with some writing as well, making a reference to George Floyd. But again, this is the peaceful part of the protest. These are the people who have a constitutional right to be out here asking for justice, not only again justice in the sense of police brutality, but for the death of George Floyd.
Eliana, as we stay on your shot here, we want to bring in the Chief of Police for the Santa Monica Police Department, Cynthia Renaud. Forgive me if I mispronounce your last name. We appreciate you being with us right now as we continue to see images of a peaceful protest that's happening on Ocean Avenue. But we understand, Chief, that in about 30 minutes or so, a curfew is going to go into effect.
Yes, that is correct. At 4 p.m., there will be a citywide curfew in effect in Santa Monica, and we're requesting that all of our protesters return safely to their homes at this time.
Chief Renaud, why was that decision put into place? Is it because of the looting? What made you decide to move that to 4?
Yes, ma'am. Unfortunately, we have experienced criminal activity here in the city, and we have experienced looting. And because of that violence, in order to protect the health and safety of our citizens, we have declared both an unlawful assembly and have instituted a curfew beginning at 4 p.m.
As we continue to stay on these images, as you mentioned, we can... Avenue, dealing with the peaceful protests, but we also see police officers having to take care of the Santa Monica Place Mall, the 3rd Street Promenade. Have you requested any assistance from outside agencies?
Yes, we have requested mutual aid, and we are receiving help from several of our area partners here in Los Angeles County. We will protect this city, and even though there are looters and there is theft and criminal activity going on, the police department is active, and we will be making arrests for any of the criminal activity that occurs.
Chief, have you had any arrests? I know we saw one live. Are you getting any numbers on how many arrests were made today?
I do not have any numbers right now, no.
What about injuries of any kind to anybody demonstrating or police officers?
I don't have information on that at this moment. I'm sorry.
And how would you categorize the peaceful demonstration today? That's what we're saying, because we have not seen any sort of unlawfulness as it would pertain to the people who have gathered here for that demonstration.
Well, I think we're dealing with a couple of different groups out there. And the Santa Monica Police Department and the city of Santa Monica is here to support the peaceful protest rights of all of our citizens. In statements that we have made citywide, we grieve with the families of Mr. Floyd, and we feel the sentiment of our public. And it appears to us that our crowd here in the city is really two crowds. One crowd that is peaceful. In fact, another crowd that was unruly and yelling at officers and throwing some bottles. We had community members hold hands and stand in a line in front of our police officers. We are one with our community in the protest and in the feelings and in them expressing their sentiments, but we will not stand for the criminal behavior and the looting that's taking place.
As we see these images of the peaceful protests and your officers there on the line, as you mentioned, and as Kathy said, we continue to see how peaceful this has been, but we want to make it clear at this point, it's been several hours that they have been out there. This is now considered an unlawful assembly because we are now 30 minutes away from that curfew. And also, I'll ask you, how will that curfew be enforced?
So the curfew will be enforced with a heavy police presence in the city, advising people that there is a curfew in place. I believe in our law-abiding citizens, and I believe that when advised of the curfew that they will comply.
And how are they being notified? Is it, do you send out an alert? Will police be there on any kind of a intercom system explaining to them that they need to disperse? What will we see?
Yes, you will see social media push-outs. The crowd will hear information over loudspeakers from police cars, and there will be individual advisements from police officers.
Have you been hearing from any small business owners or business owners in this area that may have been ransacked or looted at all from in the last few hours?
Yes, we have had looting and we have had criminal activity, and I've been in contact with the business owners.
And how do you reassure them at this point?
I'm getting close to your time. I think I'm going to need to cut off pretty soon. I want to thank you all very much for helping us get this word out. I think I speak for Los Angeles County as a whole, that all of law enforcement stands ready to support peaceful protests, but we will not stand for the criminal activity that takes place.
Absolutely.
Cynthia Renaud, Chief of Police for the Santa Monica Police Department, thank you for your time. We will let you go. We know you are very busy. Again, 30 minutes now away from the 4 p.m. curfew that has been instituted in the city of Santa Monica. There on your screen, two completely contrasting events. One, on the left side of your screen, a peaceful protest. On the other side of your screen, looting and ransacking just blocks away on 4th Street, the left side on Ocean Avenue, and really just what we've been seeing over the last few days, Kathy. This is completely representative of that.
Yeah, and we've seen this looting for the good part of 2 hours now as the peaceful demonstration was going on, as you said, Jonathan. At the same time, people taking advantage and breaking into the mall there. Now, they had thought ahead and they put up barriers outside that Santa Monica Place, that huge mall there. They placed barriers outside of the stores, but we saw people go right through them. They ripped them down. They went in any way they could and then made access into the mall from several different locations. The first spot we saw was the Nordstrom, and then at the Bloomingdale's, they were in that area as well. And that's where we saw police really stage a large presence. They had a group of officers go in. Unfortunately, because it is a half-closed mall, we couldn't see what was happening inside, but twice we know that police went into that mall. And now it looks like, Jonathan, people are starting to move about, and it's not the organized group anymore.
No, and well, I mean, this is the group now being told to disperse, as we heard the chief say just a few minutes ago, because of that curfew coming into place. They're arguing that the police have let them demonstrate, let them practice their First Amendment right to assemble and protest peacefully. That is something that we want to stress we've consistently seen all afternoon through the streets of Santa Monica. But now they are being told to disperse and to go home, because in less than half an hour they will be considered an unlawful assembly. That's what they've been deemed as now, being told to go home, because at 4 o'clock they will not differentiate between a peaceful protester and a looter. They will combine them. They will just be people out on the street unlawfully, because that curfew will be in effect.
Yeah, that's when we'll start to see people cited and arrests possibly being made. It's what's been happening the last few nights. We're going to bring in NBC4's Conan Nolan right now, and he's talking with Supervisor Catherine Barger.
That's right. I believe we have LA County Supervisor Catherine Barger. She is the chair of the Los Angeles County Board of Supervisors, representing 10 million people. Supervisor Barger, are you on the line?
I am on the line.
Yeah, so let me ask you something. There's one thing we don't talk about much here. No social distancing. I mean, the question, they had this concern with protests weeks ago in other parts of the state when you had anti-stay-at-home orders and people were protesting that. We're looking at, correct me if I'm wrong, but we're looking at a potential problem here for the transmission of a virus which not only doesn't know geographic or political boundaries, it knows no boundaries when it comes to political protest.
Absolutely, and we will find out in 14 days, won't we? I mean, it's very frustrating to me to watch what's going on. I mean, I completely support peaceful demonstration, and that can be accomplished with social distancing, but I am convinced that there are a few that abuse the peaceful demonstration as a distraction in order to go in and do looting and do what's being done in these communities.
Right, and we should also point out that there's a dual crisis you're facing. Yes, these are some national chains that you're looking at being looted, but you have small mom and pop stores that are being looted as well. They're facing a crisis. We can't underscore this enough. We're looking at Depression-era unemployment in this state, and what we're seeing here in terms of the economy of some of these neighborhoods and some of these cities, that too is just going to add to the devastation.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, you know, it's not lost on me that we had the ability to announce on Friday that restaurants could open up, that businesses were finally able to kind of get up and running, and we're talking about mom and pop. And then to see what's taking place, and yes, they're targeting some of the big chains, but they're also targeting businesses that we're looking forward to trying to get back on their feet. And it is truly opportunist, and this does not represent the majority that are out there peacefully protesting on behalf of George Floyd. These are people that truly are taking down this community.
So the LA County Sheriff's Department is involved, obviously, to a great degree in trying to quell this rioting. Not so much the protests, but what we're seeing in terms of the looting. Can you tell us a little bit about the involvement of the Sheriff's Office and their relationship with the National Guard? Do you know where the National Guard is being deployed?
So Sheriff Villanueva is in charge of that, and my understanding is he has been in discussions and is actually deploying in areas that they feel it is necessary. So he is the lead on that, and he's been very active in working with LAPD as well to make sure that they're deployed in areas where they are going to help support law enforcement.
Right. We've seen civil unrest before, and there's a school of thought that says that just the visual image of the National Guard can actually help keep some of this from happening, or can be a deterrent when it comes to the looting. We haven't seen anything like that in Santa Monica or what we're looking at here.
No, I think what's frustrating to me is that what you're seeing in Santa Monica. I mean, I think someone said this is as good a day as as it's looking in terms of less looting. But what's happening is wrong. What these people are doing is wrong. National Guard's going to be out there. My concern is when daylight leaves us and we go into the dark, what is going to occur. And I think it's important for us to recognize that the National Guard is there to support and help law enforcement who are the front line, who are doing an incredible job under very, very extreme and difficult circumstances. So I would ask the public to recognize that while we support peaceful demonstrations, I think we need to take a step back at this point and recognize that there are those that are not in there for the peaceful demonstration. They're in there to take advantage of the situation and truly cause harm on our communities.
Are you concerned, to my knowledge, there's been very little in terms of this kind of activity, looting in your district, but there have been word that there have been plans to go after stores in Glendale, for example, and other places that are in your district. Are you in contact with the authorities in some of the outlying cities outside of the city of LA?
Absolutely. For example, yesterday there was a peaceful demonstration up in Santa Clarita, and it ended peacefully, no looting. I know that Glendale is being targeted, and I know that the city manager and the police chief are coordinating, and my hope is that if they call out and need National Guard support, that they will get it in order to ensure that those that do show up are peaceful. But understand, if we put a curfew in place, there's going to be no need for anybody to be out there protesting beyond the time for the curfew.
So give us the parameters of the curfew. It's for the county?
Yeah, so we're waiting for Sheriff Villanueva. I've been coordinating with Sheriff Villanueva. I believe that his preference is to have a 6 to 6 curfew. Again, we're waiting for that confirmation, but it will be county-wide. And I think it's important for us to respect that and to recognize that it's for the greater good. I know we're coming off of Safer at Home, going back into Safer in the Community, which is the goal that I've had all along, is to get people back out into the community, supporting small businesses and restaurants. But given what's going on, you are safer at home, not only for your health, but also for public safety.
So could you, for the sake of clarity, could you repeat a little of that? So you believe the Sheriff of Los Angeles County is going to ask for a curfew starting at 6 o'clock tonight countywide, lasting how long?
Till 6 in the morning. I mean, my understanding, and again, there's definitely going to be a countywide curfew in place tonight. The sheriff will determine what those hours are. I think his preference right now is to have it begin at 6. I completely support and believe that we need to support his request because he understands all the dynamics out there. But again, I think that'll be coming through literally in the next few minutes.
Is there coordination with the city of Los Angeles, Mayor Eric Garcetti, and the extension of the city's curfew?
Well, I can tell you that there's coordination between the sheriff and Police Chief Moore. And again, you know, I let public safety drive the discussion as it relates to what they need to get things in place. And so I'm confident that Sheriff Villanueva has been in contact not only with Chief Moore, but also with our other 87 cities that are those that have police chiefs. He's been in close contact with them as well.
Is there a countywide state of emergency?
Yes, I declared that. That was already in place. That was declared this morning, and actually it was declared late last night. We declared a state of emergency countywide, and I know the city of LA has as well, so we have put that in play.
Have you been in contact with the governor's office? Is there a potential for an increase in the deployment statewide of National Guard troops?
Well, let's wait and see how it goes tonight. I think that the state has been very generous in sending down. I think that 1,000 have been requested, and I think we're pretty much close to getting that number. I'm confident that the governor, working with Sheriff Villanueva, who put in the request, are well aware of what the needs are, and our goal is to complement and support the law enforcement on the line, recognizing that it's not unique to LA County. These are happening throughout different parts of the state, and so we need to be sensitive and recognize that they're being deployed other places as well.
We just had a former police administrator in a police department talking about the importance of curfews. 6 o'clock, why not earlier? I mean, Santa Monica is deciding at 4 o'clock, and it gives, from what we understand, law enforcement great latitude in actually trying to get some of this looting to stop.
Well, I think Santa Monica did that in response to what was taking place, and they put it at 4. I trust law enforcement to come up with a formula that works. Given that it is now 3:42, that gives us 2 hours to get people ready to recognize that there's a curfew in place. And so I'm not going to second guess the sheriff and his decision to request for 6 o'clock.
I'll describe the picture that we're looking at here, Supervisor. On the left-hand side, that is the California National Guard in the Mid-City area. They have been deployed downtown for the most part. We have now seen them deployed further in the direction of towards Santa Monica and West LA, as we're now in Mid-City. I'm not sure if that's Wilshire Boulevard or not. To the right, of course, is Santa Monica, and we can assume that there will be more arrests made, because when the curfew comes down, there are individuals who, as a statement of protest, will ask to be, and we see that routinely, and that's almost in coordination with law enforcement when they refuse to move and they're taken away.
I think the frustration is, I've heard that on Friday night many of the protesters that were arrested were released, and they were out doing the very same thing that they got arrested for. So I think we need to be very vigilant in how and who are arrested and what is done, because at the end of the day, we don't want to recycle and reinforce bad behavior by simple slap on the hands. And I feel that, I've talked to many of my constituents who are very frustrated when they heard that took place on Friday night. Law enforcement's hands are tied as it relates to how they go about booking and releasing, but we've got a certain group within a large group that wants to protest peacefully, and a small group who wants to use that group as a deterrent and a distraction in order to do criminal activity within our cities.
Right, and we should point out it's not just looting. I mean, we have a LAPD officer with in critical condition as a result of apparently a bottle to the head, and there have been other injuries to law enforcement officers as well. But my question about that, we were told that there's no bail, and as a result, once they are processed, they were released OR on their own recognizance. Is the no bail policy because of COVID-19, or is that because of the new state law?
Well, I think it's a combination of both. I mean, the county's been very focused on moving to no bail, especially for those that financially cannot afford it, that traditionally they would have been put out on bail had they had means. So we've been trying to, based on the crime, but with COVID, I think it exacerbated the situation. We tried to bring down the number of people in our jails, recognizing that the COVID-19 situation and the spread within our jails was real. So I think it's a combination of both, and it's actually the perfect storm given what's going on here. And I would argue, and I'm not a mental health expert, that just coming off Safer at Home has exacerbated the situation as it relates to a lot of anxiety with people. Jobs for a period of time. So I think this is just the perfect storm to have a situation like this.
What have the other members of the board been calling and telling you?
The other members of the board, I mean, we've been in support of the declaration for the emergency, and I mean, we're all concerned. I mean, this is something that we all stand united in the fact that the situation with George Floyd, I mean, justice has to occur, and there is no question that what happened was a murder of a gentleman on camera for all to see, and he has to be held accountable for what he did, and we are united on that. But that does not give people a license to go out and do the kind of criminal activities being done on the street as it relates to looting. We all support peaceful demonstrations. We would hope they would do it recognizing social distancing and face masks, which I sound like a broken record, but the reason why we were able to announce on Friday that restaurants could open and that we were able to kind of move toward phase 3, safer in the communities, was because we were practicing that, and I only hope this doesn't take us back to a situation that we don't want to be in.
Supervisor, by chance, do you know anything about transit within Santa Monica? We were hearing that some of the off-ramps on the Santa Monica freeway have been shut down, or PCH. Do you know anything about that?
I'm sorry, I don't. I know that MTA, our transit's probably in close contact with them, and has been very focused on working with law enforcement to make sure that we terminate where we need to in terms of the bus system. And I know last night we did, and then it started again this morning.
And finally, Supervisor, I'll wrap this up. Is there any sense of frustration on the part of you, the board, and others that efforts have been made with the LAPD, the LASO? Certainly you have your critics. No police department's perfect because people aren't perfect, but efforts have been made at the LAPD, for example, is racially diverse. It represents racially the city that it serves, and yet you can be in this position because of the actions of 4 officers in a municipality thousands of miles away.
I'm frustrated in that I feel that what occurred in Minneapolis was horrific. I know we've come a long way here, but what you're seeing from the people, at least, and I know some people that were at Pan Pacific Park yesterday, they were protesting in support of the people in Minnesota. And we recognize, and they recognize, that we've come a long way, but I recognize we've got a long way to go. We are working together. I mean, our commission that's been put in play to be oversight for the is diverse as it relates to each appointee on that commission. So we've come a long way, as has the LAPD. I mean, Chief Moore has been unbelievably transparent and responsive to the citizens of LA City, and this board has as well. The Board of Supervisors stood tall in recognizing that we have to have full transparency and accountability, because as you said, we're all human. There's nobody that's perfect, and if someone does something that's inappropriate, whether it be in law enforcement, in politics, in any segment, you've got to be held accountable.
LA County Supervisor, the Chair of the County Board of Supervisors, Catherine Barger, thank you very much, and good luck and stay safe.
Thank you, you too.
All right, Conan, thank you so much. Catherine Barger, who we've been hearing from almost every day, talking about COVID-19, and Jonathan mentioning once again, we'll see what happens in 14 days, because we're seeing these large groups come together and, not practicing social distancing, not everyone wearing a mask out there.
We want to get up to Eliana Moreno and News Chopper 4 Alpha following what's happening in the city of Santa Monica. We are 10 minutes now from a curfew taking effect, which will give law enforcement an entirely new strategy on how we approach people who are out in the street, especially the people who are looting. We've seen today, Eliana, is that these have been peaceful demonstrations, but as you heard, within the last 20 minutes, those demonstrations have now been declared an unlawful assembly. What are you seeing, Eliana?
We see a lot of movement, Jonathan. We've seen additional officers arrive. These are deputies, rather, that just arrived from over the 10 freeway. They were walking over the Main Street overpass of the 10 freeway, and now they're at Santa Monica Station. They're here to brief with the Santa Monica police officers so they can know exactly where their assets will best be needed as the curfew goes into place and the crowd starts to scatter. I'm going to move this shot over now, though, to the peaceful crowd here on Ocean Avenue near Colorado. This is one of 2 groups. There were 2 clusters of protesters who were on Ocean Avenue. The first group was just off to the north. I'll go to that shot first. And for the most part, that crowd has in fact scattered. Most of them are actually now off into a little park area just off of Ocean Avenue. But even that location is still not good enough. They will have to leave the area, even though they have cleared the road. Once that curfew sets in, they could get arrested for still being out and about. But for the most part, that group has gotten off the main roadway, but there's that other group just to the south. This one's the one just south of Colorado. You can see that most of those protesters are still blocking the streets. A lot of them with their hands up, fist in the air. A lot of them have sat down as well. They are willing to get arrested. That's what we've seen over covering these protests over the last few days. Once a protester sits down in the middle of this street, they know they're going to get arrested, but it is a sacrifice that they're willing to make to continue their cause.
So we're still seeing a good many people out there, even though we are now 8 minutes away from this curfew going into place. They've sort of splintered, as you said, into two groups, and that one is right here, doesn't appear to be going anywhere. As you said, maybe they want to peacefully be detained and cited, and then the other group has just moved off the road, but they're still gathered on the side.
Yeah, still gathered on the side and still out here in Santa Monica past curfew if they stay here for an additional 8 minutes. So they could also get arrested, even though they're for the most part not really blocking the roadway anymore. They're all I don't know the exact name of this park, but it's just off of Ocean Avenue here near Palisades Beach Road in the Santa Monica area. I'm still counting dozens of people, easily 50 people, maybe more. And look at all of the officers who are still on scene here, still blocking Ocean Avenue. They were the reason why the protesters moved off to the side of the road. They started making announcements, letting them know that if they did not clear, that they did run the risk of getting arrested. Most of them listened and cleared the roadway. But unfortunately, there's still a large crowd just to the south here. I'm going to push in on them here in just a moment. That is still on scene and refusing to move.
Yeah, it's interesting as we watch the two different crowds. We want to remind our viewers that this has been really a peaceful protest that we've been following throughout the streets of Santa Monica today. And in the last hour or so, we did see on Ocean Avenue the peaceful protests continue, but really separate into these two groups. And on one side, as you just showed us, they're at Palisades Park, off the street, no longer doing that. So, like, basically listening to officers to get out of the roadway as the curfew is set to take effect here. But these people here, this smaller group, much smaller group, willing to, continue their civil disobedience and risk getting arrested in the next 7 minutes or so, as they've already been declared an unlawful assembly. And Eliana, and the other issue too, of course, just blocks away. The looting does continue, I'm sure.
Oh, the looting does continue, Jonathan. I'll see if I can move the shot over to one of those areas. Those two groups are really separated. And I wouldn't call the looters necessarily a group. That is not what they are. They do look to be operating all on their own for the most part. Most of them are on 4th Street and between Santa Monica and Broadway. So I'm going to get the shot over there here in a second, if possible, to see what's going on there.
Yeah, we'll wait for you to go ahead and check in over there. We're going to switch over to our own NBC4 Rick Montanez. He has been following the situation with the National Guard. We heard from the mayor. He had talked to the governor last night, and the Guard was mobilized, moved in overnight, up to 1,000 members, and we're seeing more people running there right now in Ileana's shop. But let's go over to Rick. Rick, what can you tell us about the National Guard here now?
Well, Kathy, what the mayor was saying earlier today is that there are two different activations in terms of the National Guard responding here to Southern California. At least that is the initial response. 500 for the county that were called in by the Sheriff's Department, and then 500 that were requested, 500 troops requested to come in to help the city of Los Angeles. We'll show you some video of where they are stationed. The convention center is essentially home base right now for those 500 National Guard troops called in by Mayor Garcetti. When he talked with Governor Gavin Newsom last night, he says this afternoon the mayor talked about the deployment of those troops, those National Guard members. He says they will be out in the community, not policing, not patrolling, Garcetti says, but actually providing security, in a sense, to a lot of the businesses that are in these areas in the city of Los Angeles that are getting hit by this looting. He says that is in an effort to get the officers back out onto the street. Take a listen to what the mayor says and what Chief Michael Moore had to say.
We mobilized our entire organization in a matter that has not happened in more than 30 years.
These actions are intended to protect our neighbors, our local businesses.
So here we are. We talked about this yesterday as well in terms of the LAPD having to bring in all of their resources, sending out detectives in uniform to be on the streets and redeploying officers to certain hotspot areas where they need to focus on. So the National Guard is also here. But of course, as the situation unfolds, we'll see how the deployment may change for those Guards members. As we've been seeing those aerial shots from News Chopper 4 Alpha this afternoon, where we see the Guards, men and women, out in different areas. So that's something we'll certainly keep an eye on. But for now, what the mayor was saying today is that the Guard is here to help to bring the peace, to help get officers back onto the streets. Reporting live, I'm Rick Montanez. Kathy and Jonathan, we'll go back to you.
All right, Rick, thank you for that. As we continue to watch images in 4th Street in Santa Monica, I believe that this is the REI you're seeing here from News Chopper 4 Alpha that we have been continuing to monitor. This is just one of many stores along 4th Street in Santa Monica that have been looted. It is the looting that is completely separate from the protests happening blocks away that has really dominated, unfortunately, our coverage and taking away from the message of those protesters. And this is the reason, this looting, that is caused the city of Santa Monica to institute a curfew that will take place in about 2 minutes. At 4 p.m. that curfew will take place, and we're continuing to monitor. That means anybody outside in this area will be considered unlawful. They will not allowed to be outside in this area, and they will be subject to arrest or citation. As we approach the 4 o'clock hour, we want to let you know that you are watching NBC4's continuing coverage of the protests taking place after the death of George Floyd. The curfew, again, just about to take effect here in the city of Santa Monica, 4 p.m. And we have learned that LA County Supervisor Captain Barger telling us a few minutes ago there will be a curfew in effect for all of LA County. The LA County Sheriff confirming that curfew will start at 6 o'clock. And contrasting today's protests, which have been peaceful really the entire time, we are continuing to see the looting here on your screen being done by people in completely separate groups in Santa Monica, people who are not part of the protests, people here who are stealing items and really stealing the message of the demonstrations. Cars and SUVs we've been seeing pulling up, people running inside of stores, grabbing things, going right back into their cars as we continue to follow what's the development here, again, taking away from the message of the protest. We want to get to our own Conan Nolan, who's with us now. Conan, what can you tell us?
I wanted to bring into the conversation.
We're at the REI store, Jack.
Okay, we're hearing Eliana. Here's Conan. Conan?
Yeah, I'm so sorry. Yes, I want to bring into the conversation, I think we have on the line Assemblyman Reggie Jones-Sawyer. He's the chair of the Assembly Public Safety Committee, Democrat of South Los Angeles, somebody who knows something about civil rights. He also knows he's seen his share of civil unrest. His uncle was even a member of the Little Rock Nine, the students that in 1957 desegregated Little Rock schools, famously with the National Guard at their side, allowing to get them to the classroom. Assemblyman, thank you for taking the time. I have to ask you, first of all, your thoughts about what you have seen in the city for the past 48 hours.
And thank you, Coleman. It's disheartening to see the looting, destruction of property, but it's also encouraging that people are standing up and peacefully speaking out on something that we've all been working on for quite a while. I feel something different, much different than what was happening in the civil unrest, where I was emergency preparedness coordinator. I saw Chief Gates and Mayor Bradley during that time and how tense it was. The same intensity, but it seems like people want a solution this time. People want to see something happen. And I've been saying for a long time, all it takes is just one person to make a difference, whether it's Mahatma Gandhi, Jesus Christ, or Martin Luther King. If one of those officers had just pulled that person off, his fellow officer off, if one person had just said, don't loot, don't throw a stone, don't hurt a law enforcement officer, we would be in a much better place right now.
We are in continuing coverage here on KNBC TV Los Angeles of the civil unrest and protesting that is peaceful protesting taking place in Los Angeles County specifically. Speaking with Assemblyman Reggie Jones-Sawyer, Democrat of South Los Angeles and chair of the Assembly Public Safety Committee. You have been down this road before, Assemblyman, and there has been conversations before and dialogue. There have been changes at LAPD and the Sheriff's Office, but you must feel some sense of frustration that this sort of repeats itself, and that yes, we've had them before, but it doesn't seem like it's getting any easier.
So I with a lot of laws, I used to work for the city of Los Angeles, so I know what it's like to be a bureaucrat, and I tell people I'm one, and now I'm an elected official, and I make laws now. But the rubber meets the road is at the implementation stage. And we need to actually come together, both with the community, with elected officials, with unions and others, to come and find a way to finally resolve this. And that's at the implementation side. I think I've told you before, we've done quite a few laws that have benefited and have moved the needle. We've had several police chiefs. We even changed some of the makeup of the community as far as law enforcement. We've done quite a bit, but to get us over the hump to where we have true equality, we're going to have to all come together and to just resolve it once and forever.
Right, but to somebody who watches this and says, listen, all you can do is help with the community that you're in. And this is a national problem. So whatever you do in Los Angeles, and I mentioned this earlier with Congresswoman Karen Bass, who you know, who represents part of your district, that yes, you can do what you can with the municipalities and the police departments within the community where you can be active and where you as a legislator can help pass legislation. But this is a national issue, so you are at the whims to a certain degree in terms of public conduct for departments across the country that you have no control over. So I'm just wondering, is this a federal problem, and can this be done at a federal level?
So it is a national problem. The solution doesn't have to come from the top down. It can't come from the bottom up. And California, Los Angeles, have been the bellwether of change for as long as I've known. And so if we want to make change, sometimes it's got to start here at the local level. Sometimes it's got to start here in Los Angeles. Sometimes it's got to start with the people in Los Angeles saying that enough is enough, and we're going to make change. And then we pull in the right people to effect that change. Because the real thing is systemic racism. And until we can really grapple with that in a substantive way and not do Band-Aids to it, we will be looking at this over and over again. That also includes looking at the training, the policies, the procedures that we have for the criminal justice system. They were in place, put in place a long time ago, and the society has moved, advanced in a way where we've got to look at them and say they're outmoded. Like I tell people all the time, if you look at some of the early training or the early policies that were developed in law enforcement, they were based on the slave trade and slave bounty hunters going after runaway slaves. And so we got to get that out of some of these practices so that we can move forward and understand where we were, and then understand where we need to go, and then we've got to have a one-on-one serious talk with both the community and law enforcement on how we can make these changes sustainable and effective. That's the part. Implementation is not easy. Legislation is easy. Implementation is very difficult, and we just need to do that hard work.
Hard work ahead. The Honorable Reggie Jones-Sawyer, member of the California State Assembly and the chair of the Public Safety Committee. Assemblyman, thanks for taking the time, and stay safe.
Thank you, Conan. It's a pleasure.
Conan, thank you for that. It is now 4:05. It is 5 past the hour now. You're watching NBC4's continuing coverage of the protest taking place of the death of George Floyd in the city of Santa Monica, a protest that has remained peaceful all afternoon, but has now been declared an unlawful assembly by police because as of 6 minutes ago, a curfew went into effect in the city of Santa Monica through tomorrow morning, and we have also learned that there is a curfew in effect in the entire LA County, Los Angeles County, starting at 6 p.m. that will go until 6 a.m. tomorrow. LA County Sheriff confirming that. Contrasting today's protests, which have been peaceful again mostly, we are continuing to see looting as well, just blocks away from here in the city of Santa Monica, which led to that early that early curfew. You're seeing it on your screen there. That the looting, really people stealing items from different stores along 4th Street and stealing the protest message. We've seen cars and SUVs pulling up, people running inside stores, getting right back in their cars and taking off. Kathy, it's just been kind of unruly just a few blocks away from where we've seen some really peaceful demonstrations.
Yes, the demonstration has been peaceful, but now it is unlawful because these people have been told that they need to leave the area, and it'll be interesting to see what police do at this point, because we have some of the people who are peacefully demonstrating now sitting in the streets. If we go up to Eliana Moreno, we can ask her. She's been over the scene here. Are we seeing any fewer people? Because it doesn't seem like it.
Kathy, the curfew is well in effect now, but you wouldn't know it based off of all of the people that are still out here on Ocean Avenue. The group that I'm showing you now is the one that had actually cleared completely off the roadway and had made their way into the park, but now at least half of them have made their way back onto the road. Perhaps they have decided that it is worth it to get arrested, because that is exactly what is going to happen in the next few minutes if they do not clear out of the area. And let me move the shot now over to the other group that is just to the south. Again, this is going to be Ocean Avenue near Colorado. This is where we have another group that is also obstructing the roadway. It's about the same size as that first group, but you can see still a lot of people out here, a lot of people that run the risk of getting arrested, and there are plenty of officers to do it. Look at the intersection right here. We have dozens of officers already on scene. There's an additional few other dozen officers that are coming out here now over from the Santa Monica Police Station to join in and start effecting some of those arrests.
And besides the City of Santa Monica Police Department, we heard from the police chief, Cynthia Renaud, that they have additional resources that have come in from other areas. So they have extra help out there today. And in fact, we should mention that the City of Santa Monica is planning to hold a news conference coming up at 4:30. So that's 20 minutes away now, 30 minutes into their curfew that they have implemented. So we'll get an update from them. We'll find out the very latest on what they have to say. Probably a lot about what they saw today from a few individuals who took advantage of the opportunity to loot several of those stores there that had prepared for it. We saw a number of stores that had boarded up, but they went right through that. So again, as we continue to follow News Chopper 4 Alpha, Ileana's shot here of that group that had moved off the road there to the side to the park, and they were on the grassy area, but now some of them have wandered back onto the street, knowing full well that this curfew has now gone into place. So we're kind of waiting to see right now what authorities will do, if they'll move in or exactly. And
Kathy, as you mentioned, you know, the police in this area is stretched thin. They are getting assistance from mutual aid and different agencies outside of Santa Monica, but we have seen police, you know, peacefully let protesters demonstrate, practice their First Amendment right to assemble, but just blocks away, they've had to stop looters from entering the Santa Monica Place Mall. We know that all afternoon they have blocked off and tried to protect the 3rd Street Promenade, and then we see looters along 4th Street, and now we're seeing some kind of tear gas canisters, some kind of smoke coming here, and we're not sure if that's coming from police or if that's forcing those protesters to disperse. Can we get Eliana back about what she's saying here?
It looks like maybe from police, Eliana?
Yeah, it's unclear who threw it. We were actually focusing our attention on one of the groups when this smoke bomb was deployed. But
or they have weapons drawn.
Yeah, the officers do have their less than lethal weapons drawn. That includes pepper balls, beanbag rounds that they can deploy if necessary. But let me show you where the protesters are in relation to the officers. They're quite a ways away, and that actually made most of them scatter. So that does lead me to believe that it was perhaps, it did come from the officers to try to get that crowd to disperse, and it proved to be very effective. We had just checked on that crowd about 2 minutes ago, and most of them were still in the middle of the road, and you can see what that smoke bomb did, pushing most of them to the park to the east.
We'll see if they leave, actually, though, because we've seen them congregate again, as we saw on the other side. They were on the grassy area well off the street, and then they got back on the street. So did that just scatter them, and they're going to come back? We'll have to wait to see what happens there. Yeah, and my pilot is actually telling me that he's seeing additional people that are either coming or going that are now on the overpass for the 10 freeway. So you see some of those folks there. It's unclear if they are related to this protest in any way, but earlier we did hear that there were some protesters on an overpass, and there they are. So there's a larger group there that is now making their way. This is the 4th Street overpass for the 10 freeway. So they might have a chance to possibly even get off on the freeway. That's the wrong way, though, if they get on right there. Hopefully they don't do that, but there is the possibility that they could get onto the Santa Monica freeway, the 10 freeway. This is going to be the 10 freeway with the 4th Street on-ramp is what they're coming up to right now.
And are you seeing any CHP in that area or any kind of law enforcement trying to block any kind of entrances or on-ramps or off-ramps?
Yeah, let me widen out and check real quick. Because we weren't expecting to have them come this way, so it's unclear if the officers were expecting that as well. And at this point, I'm not seeing any CHP units on that particular on-ramp. I don't know that there's an on-ramp to the 10 freeway from here. Let's check. It looks like we do have some sort of traffic control taking place over here, but that is appears to be unrelated to what is going on the freeway right there. It looks like officers were simply staging nearby.
Yeah. Does that look like CHP, though? I do believe that is the on-ramp there, Eliana.
Yeah, it is in fact CHP, but it looks like cars are still able to maneuver onto the on-ramp. So if this guy gets on here, if this white vehicle can get on the freeway, it means that those protesters will also be able to. And it looks like, in fact, if you can.
If you could go back to where the CHP, where it looked like we saw several officers starting to line up, those CHP officers, where it appeared to be CHP, almost looking right as those protesters are now entering this intersection. Yeah, there's a highway patrol. I'm assuming they're, trying to prevent those protesters from entering the freeway.
Yeah, those protesters are going to be right there where those CHP officers are. And not too long, they're moving fairly quickly as a group, but no, they're going straight.
Yeah, it does not appear that they're going to try and enter
all right, as we continue to watch this, Jonathan, let's go to Guad Venegas. He has been on the ground in various situations. I know he was there yesterday when we were watching the Fairfax area. And Guad, where are you right now? This is our Telemundo reporter.
Right near the Santa Monica cross street, they're having a lot of audio issues. I heard you asking where we were at. We're on the corner of 4th and Santa Monica. There's looting going on right behind us. People have been entering and exiting this jewelry store, trying to find whatever has been left. Now, this entire block has businesses that have been looted. I'm going to move over this way, and you might be able to see all the trash on the sidewalk on the street. That's not actually trash. Those are boxes. Those are wrappers from products that have been stolen. You can see some shoes. There's a Patagonia store across the street. I'm going to walk over, and you can see people just running in, running out. This is what we've seen in this area of Santa Monica is complete chaos. Police officers will arrive, will try to stop the looting, but it's impossible because something else is going on half a block away. So you see the officers rush in that direction, then crowds move in this direction. It's complete chaos. You can see from my view, I can see a helicopter. I can see dozens of officers on that side doing something. The firemen with fire trucks putting out a fire that started at another store. Meanwhile, this store right here is getting looted. And this is what's been going on for the last hour, hour and a half. Now, we actually witnessed a lot of these this looting when it started. We didn't get to see this yesterday, but sorry about all the movement. We have to maneuver between traffic and everything going on. We were standing right outside the Van store, and we saw the peaceful protest going on 2-3 blocks away. And all of a sudden, 7, 8, 9 cars pull up. Now, this is like out of a movie. They pull up, they're breaking windows, by the way. You can see that. And then there's spikes coming by. This is the chaos that's going on.
Yeah, Glad, you have a lot of cars there, and you're in the street. Do be careful.
There's a lot going on, but I want to make sure I describe how the looting started when we were here. You see these cars pull up, full of people. Each car will then, some of them will step out, run in the store, start looting, while others stay and watch. They watch one side, the other side, and they keep time. About 2 minutes into it, they start honking the horns. At 3 minutes, they start yelling 3 minutes, 3 minutes, and then people run out with the products. They have bags, huge backpacks, get in the cars, and take off. I'm going to ask you to step over here, sir, please. So this is really what has been going on in Santa Monica as officers try to control what they can. Firemen put out the fires, and I mean, the images describe themselves. As you can see, there's complete chaos in Santa Monica.
Here, and I just want to ask you, as we're continuing to stay with your shot here, we want to remind you to please be safe while you're out there. We have you on our left side of the screen. On the right side, we have a peaceful protest that continues through the streets of Santa Monica. Can you talk about how different what is happening where you are is from the actual protests that are happening as we speak?
Completely different. These are two groups of people. I think as these protests in LA have started 3 days ago, we've been trying to figure out what's going on. The first night it was in downtown. Yesterday it was down in the Fairflex area, and now it's here in Santa Monica. I think in Santa Monica it's been much more clear because the actual peaceful protest continues. The crowds are over on the other side of Santa Monica. Meanwhile, this is going on. So it's hard to tell how these things are organized. I did speak to some activists that were here earlier, asking them who actually organizes all of this, and they mentioned there's several different groups that will send out messages on social media, and it's difficult to see which ones are real, which ones are not. So what you have is a lot of organizers asking different groups to congregate in an area like this, and one of those groups has to be the group that is looting. This is not something that happens out of chance. This is planned. We saw the way these groups operate. They get out of their car, they have tools, they have crowbars, they have hammers, they go straight to the windows, break in, they're in, out. A lot of the people that you see going in and out now are not the people that started the looting. These are people that will walk in, grab one or two things, and keep walking. The damage started with these organized groups. So yes, two completely different groups. The one thing that I have noticed is that the groups that start all of these break-ins usually are covered everywhere. They have a mask, they have a hoodie, sometimes even glasses. So when you see a group of people running in a direction where their face is completely covered, a lot of times these are the groups that are looking for another store to break into.
And Glad, I don't know if you noticed this, but we saw from our helicopter some citizens were trying to help police in that they were ripping license plate covers off the cars. We saw things like that where the community was really trying to help not stop this, but help police to like at least get a handle on it.
We witnessed people yelling out, "This is not going to help. This isn't the change we want." We saw people like that. In fact, when we were standing, there's another explosion just went off somewhere back there. When we were standing outside the Van store, this is when all the looting began. There was a woman and a man that stood in front of the door when the looting began and yelled for everyone to stop. The people that were right in front of them stopped. They thought about it twice, but then you have 15, 20 guys rushing in, so they actually knocked them over, trampled them, and went inside the store. So some people had to come to pick up this woman and help her move to the side because it was impossible for her to stop the people. So yes, we have seen people that try to yell out, "Stop, don't do this." We've seen others like the ones I mentioned that physically have tried stopping them, but it's impossible. There is thousands of people running around everywhere. And even if somebody were to stand here and stop the looting, I can see 5, 6, 7 stores from here where others are running into. So it's complete chaos.
And Gawad, can you remind us, as we're getting safety alerts on our phones right now, reminding people about a citywide curfew from 8 p.m. tonight through 5:30 a.m. tomorrow. And again, the LA County curfew starts at 6 p.m. Gawad, sorry about that. We're hearing sirens, but we're not seeing any police activity on the ground where you are. Can you just reiterate that? What are you seeing?
So you can, the sirens you can hear are these police officers. Now this happens every 10, 15, 20 minutes we see this. You hear the sirens, the officers get in their vehicles, and they rush to another location. This is sort of the way that we've been keeping track of where everything's happening. 30 minutes ago, we were at another location where a store was set on fire. We heard all the sirens out here, walked over. Now you can see all of these vehicles moving to another location. It seems like there just isn't enough officers for the amount of activity going on in Santa Monica. So we imagine something must be happening out there, and that was the last vehicle moving. We can still see a lot of officers down the street on the other side. That's closer to Santa Monica Place, closer to Colorado Street. So, I mean, that just has been the scene. It's hard to know where they're going. Oh, this car was backing up. There is a team here, and there's somebody that's watching my steps who was able to tell me to move. So it's just a lot of confusion.
Yeah, be careful out there, backing up like that.
Yes, no, we have somebody watching, so.
Okay, well, we're glad to know that as you continue we appreciate your reporting on the ground. You're giving us our first real ground perspective of what's going on. I don't know if we can, in our booth, if we could contrast with what's happening here, these images of a peaceful protest and demonstration that does continue in the city of Santa Monica. We want to reiterate that there is peaceful protesting going on. Despite them being ruled an unlawful assembly, it has remained peaceful. In group, Kathy, than what we've seen there in Guad Venegas has shot all the people who are coming into Santa Monica, stealing from these stores, looting, breaking into businesses, to completely different things going on here, really stretching thin the police department and the police agencies and law enforcement in this area.
Yeah, our Telemundo co-worker, Guad, he was in the thick of it yesterday, and once again, he's right there on the street, showing us exactly what's happening as police try to keep up with the different areas as the looters go into each store and break in. And what a touching story. It's a terrible story that he shared with us, that some people were standing in front of the store and saying, no, don't break in, and they were pushed to the ground. And it's exactly what city leaders don't want to see. We're expecting to hear from them in just a little while. The city of Santa Monica expected to have a news conference, and we'll listen in to see what they have to say. As we know, we're now 25 minutes into this curfew they put into place at 4 o'clock. What they really want now is for everyone to get off the street. Jonathan, this demonstration that started earlier today, we're seeing people walking in the streets, but I have not seen any sort of activity that you could describe as negative in any sort of way. It's been a really peaceful group. If they wanted to get a message out there, they did it well. The demonstration seems to have gone off very well. And now all we need is for them to clear the streets and go home and pay attention to what the city leaders want them to do. And that is just to clear the streets now.
And you mentioned how city leaders, Kathy, have wanted and been asking the looters to go home and stop doing what they're doing. It's also the same people who are peacefully protesting. They are asking the very same thing of the people who are ransacking stores to stop what they're doing immediately, because it is simply taking away from the message and from the demonstrations about the death of George Floyd and police brutality across the country. The very message that they want us to cover, that they want us to focus on, continues to get stolen by the people who are committing crimes as we speak. Can we get back up to Eliana Moreno in News Chopper 4 Alpha? And just, Eliana, where are you now? What are you seeing? We know that this peaceful protest has been declared unlawful. Are you seeing police in this area? Where are you?
Jonathan, we're right on Ocean Avenue and Olympic. This is the group that we saw walking over the 10 freeway at 4th Street. We have followed them now for several miles, and at no point have we seen them be unruly in any way. No vandalism, no criminal activity of any kind. They have been just peacefully walking on the streets here of Santa Monica. But what is about to happen is that if they continue walking north on Ocean Avenue the way that they are, they will join up with one of the two groups that was obstructing the intersection, and I'll show you that group now. That is that group right there. That's the group that for the most part has scattered, but you still see people in the road, and there's still a lot of officers on scene. Here's where we saw that smoke bomb go off earlier. Again, right here on Ocean Avenue, you can see that line of officers still holding their ground, holding their skirmish line, and at this point, that first group, again, has scattered for the most part, and a lot of them have made their way here to this nearby park. But even though they are off the roadway, again, that curfew is well in effect. So despite how peaceful they are being at this point, they have to clear or they could get arrested.
Absolutely, and that smoke bomb did clear a lot of those protesters very quickly. We'll stay with your picture. We're going to bring in California 1 in Huntington Beach, and NBC4's Christine Kim was there today, and she has more on what happened at that demonstration. Christine.
Kathy, we've just arrived at the Orange County Bureau where it is safe for us to be here, but I will tell you that much of the protest is pretty much over, but there are still some stragglers hanging out in the downtown Huntington Beach area. There is a police presence there that remains, but I want to go ahead and show you the video of what it looked like during the peak of the protest, which began around 11 o'clock this morning. While it did start off as peaceful, a group of apparent counter-protesters and the Black Lives Matters protesters began yelling at each other. It started getting heated. They became verbally aggressive towards each other. And then the crowd started to congregate, move onto PCH, and they started to block traffic, the vehicles coming through. At that point, which was around 1 o'clock in the afternoon, that's when Huntington Police decided to declare an unlawful assembly. They asked the protesters there to leave. We saw police officers in riot gear form a line to move the crowds away from where they were gathering. That was at PCH and Main in that area there. Again, right now we're told that much of the protesters have left. There are still a few protesters there. I did speak with Huntington Beach Police's public information officer, Angela Bennett. She tells me there was no looting in the nearby businesses, thankfully, that there were no damages to the nearby buildings, also no injuries on protester side, and also no injuries with the police officers. At the very latest from here at the Orange County Bureau, I'm Christine Kim. Back to you guys.
All right, Christine, thank you for that report there. And again, just highlighting the fact that, Kathy, this is not just the only protest we've been seeing in Santa Monica, that there have been protests not only all across Southern California, but also all across the country that continue today as we continue to follow this one in Santa Monica along Ocean Avenue. It appears that they've made a circle. There are now hundreds of people who have been declared an unlawful assembly despite being peaceful the entire time. It's because a curfew is now in effect as they continue to march their way towards a skirmish line of police officers just yards from them, really.
Yeah, we were watching them for a long time, not on the move before the curfew went into effect, and then the curfew went into effect, and now they're on the move. We see some kneeling there with signs, and it'll be interesting to see what's going to happen. We are expecting police to move in at some point, but it doesn't look like these people are going anywhere. They're setting up barriers right here. Let's go to Ileana now. We're seeing more smoke. Ileana.
Yeah, more smoke coming out, and actually it looks like it's almost like some sort of fire extinguisher or something. You see it there next to that building, but the smoke is starting to dissipate. But whenever we do see that smoke go off, it does tend to cause some of the protesters to dissipate from the area. But most of them are probably not going to feel the effects of that smoke. They are a couple yards away. Let me show you where the police officers are, though. They are right in the middle of the intersection. They haven't really increased in number since we arrived on scene to replace Gil Avis and East Stroudsburg Bravo. It's still been about the same number of officers here, but we know that there are additional officers coming to the Santa Monica area. We flew over to the police station. We know that additional police officers as well as sheriff's deputies have arrived on scene to assist. And we've also heard that the National Guard is on its way there. I don't have the exact location for them yet, but as soon as we get eyes on them, we of course will focus in on that.
It looks like some people there on the right side just ran off for some reason.
It could have been because of that smoke, perhaps, or they gave out another dispersal order advising them that they will get arrested if they don't leave. But here, this is the big picture. This is that group that we saw walking, as well as one of the groups that had already been here on Ocean Avenue for a while, just kind of coming together here on the street and refusing to move. A lot of them are grabbing wood boards or whatever else they can find, and they are building their own makeshift fence here across Ocean Avenue. This is their version of the skirmish line, but you see them there. They're telling the officers that they come in peace, hands open wide up in the air, and for the most part, this group has been peaceful. They are not responsible for the looting that we have seen in nearby areas of Santa Monica. This group has remained peaceful the entire time.
And now they're moving in, as we see, to where that barrier has been set up. They've also grabbed some cones along the way. Someone is bringing in a trash can there on the left-hand side. The whole crowd just seems to be inching up to that barrier they've set up. A few people crossing over and joining in, hands up, with these two people who have already stepped in front.
And
Jonathan?
Eliana, can we get a perspective now of what the officers are doing in response to this crowd getting closer to them?
Let me widen out the shot, Jonathan. I'm going to move it just to the north.
So
and here's where the officers are.
Yeah, they seem to be staying put as of right now. And this is what we've seen in terms of this protest all day. The officers not being combative in any way with these protesters. The protesters remaining peaceful with them for the most part. And as you mentioned, and thank you for clarifying, a very different group than what we've been seeing with the looting just a few blocks away. That does continue at this moment. But again, this area under curfew. We want to remind our viewers we are anticipating a news conference from the city officials there in the city of Santa Monica to hear more about what their plan is going forward, as this peaceful protest that's been going on for several hours now has been ruled an unlawful assembly. And we're now seeing, this is probably the biggest group we've seen in several hours, Kathy and Eliana.
Yeah, and we're seeing them, as we pointed out, with those street barriers and with boards that they've set up, anything they could grab along the way, a trash can, a couple of cones there, and they set up that barrier where their standoff is, and then a few people, more than a dozen people, have decided to go in front of that, many with hands up, kneeling, or the curfew that the city has implemented, which went into effect at 4 o'clock. They're going to stay here and continue the demonstration. So in other cases, we have seen police wait, but then perhaps maybe, using more of the smoke bombs. We saw tear gas yesterday. We certainly haven't seen anything like this today. This has been totally peaceful. But there could be a point where they do send officers in to kind of drive that crowd back. But right now we're just waiting to see. And as you said, Jonathan, it'll be interesting to see what Santa Monica says when they hold that news conference, if they still do, coming up, because things have kind of changed here just a little bit.
And the curfew really giving officers more latitude to respond to these people, but obviously they could never, they couldn't go in and arrest everyone here at one time, right? They're clearly outnumbered in terms of that, but as of right now, it does remain peaceful despite being what they have deemed unlawful. But this is just probably the most tense we've seen it, but clearly not what we've seen, what we saw even yesterday, Kathy.
No.
Not even close to that measure. And so they're quite a distance away from officers. Clearly they're vocalizing their frustration. They're vocalizing how they feel. They're practicing their First Amendment right. Despite being deemed unlawful by the city of Santa Monica.
Yeah, there's certainly nothing in any way violent. We're seeing some more officers here, and it's possible that we'll see extra forces come in. As Ileana mentioned, the National Guard and city leaders and police officers, the police chief included, have told us that they have resources coming in for other departments. So we may see some of that, just bringing in more officers. But right now, it is what it is. The demonstrators holding signs, and we've seen clapping and chanting at the most. Any type of violence. Now they are simply unlawful right now because they're not abiding by that 4 p.m. curfew.
Let's bring in, as we stay on this shot, let's bring in our own Kim Tobin with some video she's seeing right now from the ground there in Santa Monica. Kim, are you with us?
Hey there, Jonathan. Yeah, we have been watching all of what appeared, as you talked about, you and Kathy, what started out as a peaceful protest there in the Santa Monica area, then having some of those people move off and some of those people starting to loot some of those stores. So we want to show you some of this video here that we're getting from some of our ground crews, from of our network correspondents that are there on the ground of the area of 4th Street and Santa Monica. You can just see this shot right here. I mean, look at this, people breaking that glass, going inside of the store, just coming out with merchandise, so much of it. We're talking about clothes, backpacks. We saw a guy with 2 guitars strung to his back there. So this has just been getting extremely volatile. And one of the shots there, we can actually see, I believe it's a single Santa Monica police officer, one patrol car there with the flashing lights, and you can flash over right across the street and all of the activities happening there. So people on the ground there are telling us really that they're pretty much overrun at this point in a lot of those areas because it's just so full of all these people looting, a lot of them with those face coverings on, a lot of people either covering their faces for fears of what's happening with COVID-19 or not wanting their identities to be out there. A lot of them even covering up their eyes, covering up their faces when they do see a camera, and then going on about their way and kind of just going down the line. We've seen about, I would say, 30 to 40 stores in the Santa Monica area that are just getting ravaged by all of those looters out there in that area. And sometimes at points, police nowhere to be seen in this. And also, in addition to that, we're seeing LAFD having to go down into there because small fires are being started inside some of these stores as well. So out there, the sounds that you're hearing are some of those sirens that are going off, the alarms that are going off in the stores with all the broken windows, all of that merchandise that's just being grabbed out of there. And we also talked about, you and Kathy, some of those people that are trying to help, trying to block some of these protesters, kind of getting pushed out of the way by them because the people who live in Santa Monica, a lot of them are seeing this activity right in their backyard. They don't want this to happen to their area. A lot of those people who either shop at those stores, they know people who own those stores, they themselves might be a part of that area, and they don't want to see this destruction happening. So it's just been really difficult to watch all of this. Obviously, all those looters going in, grabbing that, and a lot of them too, like we saw, having cars just full of them going there, dropping off some of the folks who run inside through a broken window. They're just kicking out the glass. They're going through the doors, grabbing what they can, just handfuls. We're talking jeans, backpacks, any equipment that they can get. REI was one of those stores that was hit pretty hard and then had those small fires that were started in there. And LAFD needs to get inside of those places to put those fires out so that they don't start spreading. You can just imagine what devastation would happen if one of those fires started to spread, moving on to all those businesses. They're so closely joined together, pretty much sharing walls down in that area. So they're asking people to make their way for the LAFD firefighters to get inside of there to be able to do their work through all of this chaos. So again, this is some of the cell phone video, some of the ground crew video that we're seeing from the area of Santa Monica Boulevard and 4th Street down near the ocean there, where what started as a peaceful protest, and some of those people are still going about a peaceful way, but then you had those looters, those rioters breaking away from that group and starting a lot of this chaos that we're still watching. And we'll be, of course, keeping an eye on it, getting all of our network feeds and keeping an eye on what's happening there. Jonathan and Kathy, we'll send it back to you.
All right, good video there of what was happening inside and on the ground. And also, we were wondering about those fire trucks. So we have confirmation there were some fires reported there. We still have Ileana. She is in News Chopper 4 Alpha, giving an overview of the area. We have that LA County curfew going into effect. We heard from Supervisor Catherine Barger that curfew is going into effect 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. That is in coordination with the Sheriff's Department. resident who reached out to them. They've been talking. Of course, a lot of authorities have, and they have reason to believe that that is a good idea for the area. They're the ones who know where the trouble spots might be. They're the ones that have the ear to the information to know exactly which areas we should be watching tonight. And that is the time that they have suggested that a curfew would be a good idea, Jonathan, for the county.
And what was also interesting was that we had initially seen the city of Santa Monica, Kathy, issue an 8 p.m. curfew in coordination with what the city of Los Angeles, city of West Hollywood, and other places were doing. But because of the looting, but because of the chaotic scene that we just saw there in the video that Kim was showing us, they were forced to move that up to 4 p.m. and in the LA County area now under a 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. curfew. But really, I'm not sure where we're seeing from Eliana's vantage point here as she circles the Santa Monica area, but you know, this entire city really stretched thin in terms of the police department, Kathy, because we saw them down on the skirmish line with the peaceful protest that's happening down on Ocean Avenue, having to protect 3rd Street Promenade. We saw looting happening in the Santa Monica Place Mall, and that was had to be, you know, we saw more officers go into that area, and then of course 4th Street, which has become the hot spot for a lot of the ransacking and looting and the breaking into the stores, which Kim was just showing us just a few minutes ago. Can we get any perspective about what Eliana might be seeing right now?
And I think anytime our chopper is on the move, we know that they're looking for something they've heard about because they hear it on the scanner or they get information from our desk. And so they hear about something we want to check out. So she may be on the search for something that she has heard about as we will get a nice view there of our scenic Southern California coastline. But again, we've been following that protest. The one in Huntington Beach that we heard got a little rowdy earlier today. We heard from Christine Kim, but mostly everything going well there today. And then Santa Monica, which has been our focus this afternoon, mostly peaceful, as you said, Jonathan. Ruin the message for everyone because they don't really have a message. They're just taking advantage of that opportunity to go in and to loot, and just so much, you know, so sad to hear from the business people who are trying to protect their businesses and then to have everything ruined and their merchandise stolen.
In many cases, Kathy, we're seeing, you know, major businesses, corporations, corporate businesses, but in a lot of cases we're seeing small business owners being affected here, and that's just sad because this was the weekend that many of them were expecting to reopen. They had prepared to finally reopen, to get back to some sense of normalcy for them, to get back to some kind of financial help for them, because that is their life business. And unfortunately, in too many places now, we're seeing too many of those small businesses affected. Here on the left side of your screen is the peaceful protests that we are seeing, but now deemed an unlawful protest by the city of Santa Monica. Police urging these people to disperse and to go home immediately as a curfew has broken out, as we see one person there run right in out of the smoke there. And on the right side of your screen, the unfortunate scene happening just 4 blocks away on 4th Street, the looting and the crimes that are happening. Can we get back up to Elle about what she's seeing? We're seeing that crowd has dispersed dramatically, Eliana.
Yeah, Jonathan, we're back over that crowd on Ocean Avenue. As you said, it's dispersing as we speak. People clearing out of the road and heading towards the park nearby because of the effects of the smoke here that they're about to start to feel here on Ocean Avenue. Let me show you the police department. Again, the number really hasn't increased, but they're using the tools that they do have on hand to try to disperse this crowd and get them to clear. These, of course, were the legitimate protesters who were out here protesting against police brutality and the death of George Floyd, but now they could get arrested if they don't clear the scene because the curfew is now well in effect. They should have gone home. They should have gotten out of the city of Santa Monica, but they're still here. And you see them running now because they're starting to feel that smoke. And it looks like we do have that line there of those pieces of cardboard or wood. It looks like most of the people that were holding those up are now gone.
Yeah, it looks like they left and there are just a few people still standing by, but because the people have left. It looks like someone helping someone else who might have been injured or something happening there. I'm not quite sure what's going on right there, but obviously getting help from a buddy. And yeah, we're watching that. I hate to see anybody get hurt in all of this, but really what the city would like is for everyone to go home now. The demonstration went well. Things went well today for them, and there's really no need to still be out there. They're pouring some water here on this man.
Yeah, it appears they're pouring water on his face.
Yeah.
Perhaps his eyes are stinging with what's going on,
Could
with
be.
what's in the air right there. And
shows you how strong it is and why people, might be running.
Oh, I've been on these scenes too many times to know how strong that is. I can't imagine even being that much closer to it like they are. But what's interesting, Kathy, is as we see more people running, they never seem to run too far. And again, the police urging them to go home immediately because they have been deemed an unlawful protest. But here they're arguing this is still their First Amendment right. They're not going anywhere. We see them move. We just never see them move too far. So that is the interesting standoff that's happening here between that skirmish line that has seemed to move maybe a few yards, but protesters never moving that much either.
No, we're seeing cars in the area too. And here we go. Police going to hurl another one of those smoke bombs there and trying to get them to disperse. And
it seems this is their strategy. They're just going to continue to push them back slowly and urge them to go home until they're tired of it, if that even ever happens. We know the curfew that's in effect, that's been in effect for 45 minutes now in the city of Santa Monica, does give them more leeway in terms of making arrests and making citations, but that's not what they want to do. Not even the police officers want to do that. They simply want this to come to a peaceful end, and we remain that this has maintained a peaceful protest throughout the afternoon, Kathy.
Yeah, but they have now achieved one more step. They have these people who have abandoned now that little barrier that they put up. There were a lot of people, and people started crowding in behind that line that we saw, even getting in front of it. But now we see them, they're pushed back now and really dispersed. We're not seeing the big crowd, at least in the street, that we were seeing earlier at all.
No, not at all. And this is just south of the pier now, the 10 freeway right there below as it heads onto PCH. I've been seeing some social media posts where CHP officers and LAPD officers are actually walking off ramps going into the city of Santa Monica. Hopefully, I think they're, in an effort to try to get people from coming into that area. And of course, we're about an hour and 15 minutes away now from an entire county-wide curfew that will take effect at 6 p.m. We are also waiting to hear, Kathy, from city officials in Santa Monica. We were expecting them about 15 minutes ago. Obviously, they're dealing with a lot to see what their plan is, because well, we've seen protests in other areas. The biggest issue isn't necessarily the protest, Kathy, but the looting that's going on 4 or 5 blocks away.
Yeah, they certainly want to try to get things under control before nightfall when it turns dark, because we've seen how that has happened each night. It just makes things more difficult. Police going street by street to try to take care of that. We're seeing more smoke going in. So again, the effort to try to push the protesters back, to send a message, to encourage them. It's time. It's time to go home. There is that curfew in effect. So let's bring this to an end. Let's just call it a day. But still, we have a few, well, more than a few stragglers who still remain out here from the protest that started earlier today and went very well. So it's unfortunate now that they're not heeding those warnings and very direct messages that police are sending right now to go home.
And while Santa Monica is already under curfew, the rest of Los Angeles County is just about to join it, as we've been mentioning. The LA County Sheriff says a county-wide curfew will take effect at 6 o'clock tonight and run through 6 o'clock tomorrow morning. More than 10 million residents being told to stay inside tonight. And along with LA County, the city of Santa Ana in Orange County also under curfew. Their curfew in Santa Ana will start at 10 o'clock. We want to get to NBC4's I don't know, actually, sorry, we want to stay with Eliana's shot here as we continue to follow what's happening in the city of Santa Monica, where a protest, a peaceful protest continues, but being told to dissipate at this moment. I'm unclear if this is, and I just may have missed the shot, Kathy, forgive me. Did Eliana move the camera? Is this a separate group here that we're seeing?
I'm not sure. Let's see if we can check in with her, Eliana. We'll get her in a minute.
Sarah was looking out the window, and he realized that there's another group,
Gotcha.
and this group is also on Ocean Avenue, but they're further north than the group that we were just monitoring. This group is going to be just south of the California incline. So these people are completely separate from the ones that we have been watching for the last few minutes. So far, so good that I haven't seen them committing any type of act of vandalism, but I'm not really sure where they came from, because it's a very large group, yeah.
Hundreds?
Easily 100 people, maybe more, all walking northbound on Ocean Avenue towards the California incline.
The difference here, though, Eliana, is there as big a police presence ordering them to dissipate as we're seeing just down the street from this?
I actually don't see any officers near this particular crowd, and I'll try to show you both crowds in one shot. So I'm going to start on the one that we just found. Let me move the shot to the south. This is all going to be along the same street, California, or not California Avenue, but rather Ocean Avenue. And this is where is that second group that we were monitoring. So the first group that we were watching actually looks a lot smaller now compared to the new group that we have found. And that new group doesn't have any officers anywhere nearby.
No, and a lot of people there. And so right now they're just continuing to walk. Holding signs, really just continuing the demonstration that started earlier today, and they appear to be peaceful, but again, as we said, in violation of the curfew at this point.
Absolutely, and I don't know if their thought process is perhaps if we walk out of the city, then we'll be fine, which is correct to a certain extent. But unfortunately, if that city is in LA County, which it will be, we have that new curfew going in at 6 o'clock. So they're only buying themselves maybe an hour's time before they run the risk of getting arrested.
And this is along Ocean Avenue, that's correct, right, Eliana?
Correct. This is Ocean Avenue with a cross of Idaho Avenue, very close to the California incline.
And yeah, as this was set up, we had always heard that they would split into two groups. So it was really a planned thing, and we've seen that throughout the day. I think one of the groups was supposed to go to the pier, and another would stay on the street. So they've continued to stay in two groups, but we have seen this one grow. And the other ones sort of scatter because they are facing the smoke bombs from police. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with this group as it spreads out. They're covering a wide area now as they continue along this street.
You almost wonder if some of the people from the other side, the other protests that Eliana just showed us, had made their way over here, because this is quite a sizable group. I mean, there are a lot of people in this crowd, by far the biggest crowd I think we've seen all afternoon. And this is really what you've been talking about, Kathy. This is what we've been seeing most of the day. This is something, you know, as a news network, that we want to stress that this has been a peaceful protest throughout the streets of Santa Monica. It made their way through different areas of the city. But as of 4 o'clock, that curfew going into effect, deeming this unlawful and police asking them to disperse, but they are continuing to practice their First Amendment right to peacefully demonstrate and assemble. And so
what's the location here? I see Montana. They're at Montana now?
That's exactly right. They're at Montana and Ocean Avenue. I'll widen out the shot just a little bit more. I want to give you the big picture.
There's the police, yeah.
Yep, there's the police coming in, and I just quickly wanted to show you that this is basically right up against the ocean, hence Ocean Avenue. So there's the shot there. Let me push back in, though, where we, as you mentioned, have now seen that first officer on scene, and it's actually forcing the people out here to make that right-hand turn onto.
Okay, so now they've deviated from the area that they've been in. So are we thinking this is what police want them to do?
Well, they'd like them to leave, and yeah, that much is clear, though these officers here taking a very different approach in terms of how they're handling it, kind of just letting them. It's interesting, the contrast between this protest and the one just down the street, Kathy.
Yeah, because down the street is where we're seeing officers lined up, and the deployment of that smoke and tear gas, which is getting people to scatter. And then here we're just seeing these people now walking from Ocean onto Montana, just right where that patrol car is, just avoiding them, and they're forcing them to turn and go, and it's working perfectly.
And police will, obviously have to monitor exactly where they're going at this point. If they're going to continue to try and go around them, or if they are actually going to disperse as they have been asked. Police, for the most part, as we've seen, have been completely, peaceful in letting people demonstrate in the way that they wanted today in the city of Santa Monica. Certainly not in the way that we saw in the Fairfax district yesterday, Kathy.
Yeah, today went really well, except for the isolated looting. Just an update now. We told you we were expecting to hear from city leaders from Santa Monica, and that was going to be at 4:30. They've now pushed that to 5:15. So during our 5 o'clock news, that is expected because obviously things are kind of changing here. They probably want to update, talk about the curfew, talk about what's next, and give us an update on what happened today in the city. So as we approach the 5 o'clock hour, that's what we're expecting for that update, that news conference to come around 5:15.
We believe that this group moving their way off of Ocean Avenue, and I believe, Kathy, was this Montana that we were looking at?
Yes.
And making their way, certainly not out of the city by any stretch. They're still well within the city limits. But this is what police have been asking them to do, is to disperse from Ocean Avenue, and this is really the first time we've seen it. We want to keep reminding our viewers that this is something we are focused on covering. The peaceful protests, the demonstrations, the frustration, the pain that they are feeling over the death of George Floyd and other police brutality issues across the country. But one thing that unfortunately we've also had to cover today, and we don't like to, but we have to, is the looting that's been happening just blocks from here on 4th Street in Santa Monica. And it's really made for an ugly sight. It's made it hard for police to help keep these protesters safe, because those police officers are now being stretched thin, having to monitor not only the protests, but really try and stop some of the looting that's been happening, and that's been very difficult for them to do, Kathy.
Yeah, they're stretched thin across the entire area. We've seen that with the LAPD. They've been put on 12-hour shifts, working around the clock. The fire department in all of these cities also stretched, having difficulty doing their jobs. And, never mind, they also have to take care of their normal business for the day. So aside from everything they're handling here, they're still getting the same calls. The fire department still getting their regular calls. So it just really taxes everyone, and that's why we've seen this call to mutual aid, and really why the governor gave the okay now for the National Guard to come in just to offer some assistance.
As they head east here on Montana, once they cross Lincoln, there is going to be a strip of businesses and stores. And, we have been focusing on mentioning how the looters are not the same as the protesters. These are two different groups. The looters being opportunists, trying to take advantage and literally steal the message away from what this demonstration has been about. And again, a peaceful demonstration as we've seen all day. We are going to get into another area where there is going to be storefronts, small businesses, boutiques, once they cross Lincoln here, headed east on Montana. And so we are going to monitor that on 4th Street just a few blocks away.
No, not at all.
We don't anticipate
we have no reason to believe that either. It's also a residential area right here, so people are handing water out to the people who are walking, so obviously in support of what they're doing. And we've seen people, waving now they are. We've got water, they're waving at them. We've seen people standing outside of their apartments, their homes, watching all of this. So now they're getting a front row seat to what has been going on all day, because this continues now. This is the way police routed them. They blocked off Ocean and got the crowd to go this way. So we'll wait and see what happens. Will these people disperse? How long will this go on? They are now in violation. That curfew went into effect almost 1 hour ago.
And here you see them making their way north. I'm not quite sure which street this is here. Eliana, where are they right now?
Jonathan, this is going to be 4th Street, coming away from Montana, and we've seen protesters on 4th Street before, but they were always heading south and not north. And because they are moving north now, this will put them into a highly residential area here in Santa Monica. And I'm really not concerned about these particular protesters because they've been great. They've been calm the entire time that we've been monitoring them. No unruly activity in any way. But the concern is that people who have bad intentions could join into the mix and disguise themselves as being one of these peaceful protesters and then try to take advantage of the situation. So that's really what we're watching out for, in addition to just watching these protesters as they peacefully make their way down the street here on 4th Avenue.
And one thing that we have been stressing, Kathy and Eliana, right, that this is in complete contrast to the looting that we're seeing. What's interesting to me is that so much of the looting is happening there on 4th Street, almost symbolic, this protest moving in the complete opposite direction on the very same 4th Street that looting is happening, perhaps maybe a mile, half a mile down. This protest moving north, a completely different scene here, a peaceful scene than what we're seeing on the street, the very same street.
Absolutely, Jonathan, and it continues to be that way. We're not seeing police in any form right now in this area, so these people continue to march with their signs, and they're going to be doing that for as long as they are allowed to, I'm sure. But at some point, we're going to see what we saw happen with the other group that was on the other side of Ocean, and that is where the police were lined up. And they were trying to get that crowd back. They were obviously sending a message with their smoke bombs to clear the area. But right now, there is nothing happening with this group. They're just being allowed to advance now. But as you pointed out, as much of the day has been, it is being done peacefully.
It is now 5 o'clock, and we are continuing our coverage of breaking news, protests, and more looting today in Santa Monica. Two very different things going on right now. A curfew has been in place in the city for the last hour, and it is in effect until 5:30 tomorrow morning. We want to thank you for joining us. I'm Jonathan Gonzalez.
We're glad you're here. I'm Kathy Barr. The National Guard out there now enforcing that curfew. We want to give you a look from News Chopper 4 Alpha over Santa Monica and News Chopper 4 Bravo, which is over a new protest in downtown LA as the National Guard rolls through.
Well, Santa Monica, again, already under curfew for the last hour. The rest of LA County is about to join it. The LA County Sheriff confirming that a county-wide curfew will take effect at 6 o'clock and run through 6 tomorrow morning. That is going to cover more than 10 million people who live in LA County, being told to stay inside tonight. And along with LA County, Santa Ana down in Orange County will be under curfew starting at 10 o'clock. Right now, we want to get up to Gil Labus in News Chopper 4 Bravo with what you're seeing, and this is in downtown Los Angeles, Gil.
That is Jonathan and Kathy. You're looking at a deployment of the National Guard here. Those Humvees moving through the streets. Right now they're eastbound on 1st Street and Spring Street. Let me come down to the corner here. And just moments ago we saw a group of LAPD officers along with National Guard members there standing at attention there at the corner near City Hall. But as I come out to a wider shot, you'll see those Humvees once again on the right-hand side of your screen, and a group of demonstrators, protesters here at City Hall on the steps. You see the LAPD officers there deployed along with the National Guard troops on the steps of City Hall. It's a peaceful protest right now. This group has been moving through the city all afternoon, and they have congregated here at the steps of City Hall. Everything seems to be peaceful right now as the National Guard is deployed in this area.
LA County Supervisor Janice Hahn is on the phone with us right now. We thank you so much, Supervisor, for joining us. We understand there is going to be a curfew in place. Tell us why the county is going with a 6 to 6 curfew.
So our Sheriff's Department made the request that we have a county-wide curfew starting at 6 p.m. and ending at 6 a.m. tomorrow morning. We feel that we need to do it a blanket curfew. We know some cities have begun to implement their own, but I believe the thinking is that this will make it easier for law enforcement departments in all of our cities, as well as our county sheriff, to substantially clear the streets after 6 p.m. It was made in consultation with many of the police chiefs in the County of Los Angeles, as well as many of the city officials in the County of Los Angeles. and I believe everyone's supportive of this. It's tough. It was a tough decision to make just as we're trying to reopen our businesses.
And we want to bring in our NBC4's Conan Nolan. I'm sure the two of you know each other well. He has some questions that he would like.
But I have to say the point person for the response from law enforcement for the county side is Sheriff Alex Villanueva, who has had a contentious relationship with the Board of Supervisors. There is one city councilman for the city of LA who came out and said he didn't want the National Guard in the city exactly because they would be under the direction of Alex Villanueva. I'm just wondering, is there a sense of confidence that the leadership of this department is operating appropriately thus far?
Well, I think that, there's a massive time in I personally am confident that the sheriff is making the right decisions. I also welcome the National Guard to come here. I lived through the Watts riots. I remember one of the complaints that we waited too long to call for the National Guard. I mean, this has gone from being a peaceful protest over police brutality in Minneapolis to looting and destruction of property. I just got a text from my brother who lives in Santa Monica, and he said they're breaking the windows at the courthouse. My brother's a judge. So this has really gotten violent, and I believe we need to join together with our sheriff's department, with our police departments, with the National Guard, and put an end to this, and get back to all of us as a country looking at the systemic problems with law enforcement and our African American friends in this country.
The daughter of the legendary Kenny Hahn, who was a supervisor for many years representing South Los Angeles, and you're right, you have been through every civil unrest dating back 50 years in the city, back to the 65 Watts riots. It must be frustrating, certainly from the legacy of your family, to know that, and certainly in the memory of your father, that this would still be happening so many years after what we saw then.
Oh, my brother and I were talking about this together this weekend, and we know our father would have been so sad to see that it's still happening. I mean, I think there were so many moments that we thought were going to be transformational in the city. I think the Rodney King beating was a real awakening for many of us. We thought that was going to transform how police departments treated people, and then we got body cameras. We thought, well, maybe that would end some of this. But I do know LAPD has gone through reforming, and we've had two African American police chiefs in LA, and I know the Chief Moore is a man of integrity, and we've got great men and women on our force. But in this country, there's still a problem, and we have got to figure this out. I really don't want to live through another one of these. And again, I think the tragedy, there's two tragedies. One is that these looters and the people who are destroying property have really taken our focus away from what happened to George Floyd and these peaceful protests that we should all be joining, frankly, to come against this kind of harm against an unarmed black man. And it's also a tragedy because I thought, to be honest with you, this weekend was going to be one where we were celebrating the reopening of our businesses. A lot of people were making reservations at their favorite restaurant, and now we've got a curfew in place. We're basically putting everybody back on lockdown, and it just breaks my heart.
We're looking at live pictures here. This is the Civic Center in downtown Los Angeles. This is Spring Street, the west steps of the Los Angeles City Hall, and it is where the California National Guard has been deployed on the steps there, along with LAPD officers. There's a full tactical force citywide. speaking with Supervisor Janice Hahn. So I have to tell you that, we have seen civil unrest before, and certainly over the past several evenings, and therein lies the issue. You have a curfew, and it would seem to me you need to address that as early as you possibly can once 6 o'clock arrives, because the destruction normally takes place once nightfall takes place, and that's when you've seen most of the damage to property. Outside of the looting we saw this afternoon, that's where the fires start. That's where the police cars are engulfed in flames. That's the critical period.
Yes, and that's what the undersheriff told me, and he again felt that a countywide curfew would make it easier for law enforcement agencies throughout the county to begin clearing the streets. And it's the only thing I believe that we need to do at this point to try and curb this violence and this looting. And again, these 4 businesses who were just eking out a survival, and now to have many of them burned to the ground again and looted. I don't know how they're going to recover. Let's not forget, in '92, we created Rebuild LA, right? Which totally focused on trying to rebuild a lot of the areas that were destroyed. And some of those businesses coming in, never came back.
Right, and we haven't had the loss of property currently that we had back then. The looting, though, as to your point, and we mentioned this with your colleague, Catherine Barger, a little while ago, we're in the middle of an potentially an economic depression. We have 1 million people unemployed in Los Angeles County alone, and so getting the economy back is going to be... And we're looking at this crowd here again. This is Main Street on the west steps of City Hall. There's no social distancing taking place, and now I'm sure the public health officer, Barbara Farrar, is concerned about the advent of COVID-19. You try to keep people apart, and this certainly lends itself to an advance of the virus, which does not respect political affiliations or your position on civil rights.
Again, it's all sitting at home. This is just the perfect storm of tsunami. This is just a disaster this weekend. I heard my colleague Catherine, she's right. We're going to, 14 days we'll know whether or not this has really set us back in terms of flattening our curve. We were really going in the right direction. People were really mostly obeying our stay-at-home orders, and this is just a tragic weekend.
Right, and to your part of your responsibility, the state of California is looking at a $54 billion budget deficit. We're looking at potential cuts to public education as a result of that. The county, you've seen a cut in your budget as a result of the devastation to the economy, and this is just going to complicate that.
Yes, well, we're already looking at a $2 billion hit to our budget in the county of Los Angeles this year and next year. And everybody wants to know, where is the extra money going to now help rebuild these businesses? And of course, we will see a lot more overtime, of course, from our sheriff's department, which we're going to have to pay for, which we gladly will pay for, in my opinion, because we need them out there. They're all doing 12-hour shifts. Many of them are not taking time off. We're certainly on high alert. This puts a huge strain on the men and women in law enforcement. Tonight and maybe for the next couple nights to come, which is keep the peace. And that's just what I'm calling for. It's really peace, calm, telling everybody to go home. And I think you can tell the difference between the peaceful protesters and those who are out to do damage. And I think the curfew will help us make that even
But it's an extremely delicate balance. You have one enforcement, aided by the National Guard, trying to enforce the law and keep people from doing the kind of things that we've been seeing, not just looting, but assault, while at the same time allowing people to demonstrate. And then you have to enforce a curfew if you're about 45 minutes, a little more than 45 minutes away. That will be problematic. It's going to be a long night. Supervisor Janice Hahn, thank you very much for joining us. I wish you the best of luck and stay safe. Kathy, back to you.
All right, Conan, thank you so much. Supervisor, thank you for that. And we're going to switch now to LA County Sheriff Alex Villanueva. It has been a tough few days. We were just hearing from the supervisor. They are following your guidance in putting this curfew into effect countywide now, 6 o'clock tonight till 6 in the morning. Is it because you're expecting more of the protests that we've seen and more of the violence that we've seen, unfortunately, by a
people getting assaulted and attempts at arson, we have to draw the line there, and we're not going to tolerate other people being victimized, and it takes away from the message about George Floyd and his tragic murder. So, definitely a big tool in our favor because that allows us to enforce it. We're not going to run around chase everybody and enforce it. We're going to selectively enforce it with those who are actively involved in looting, rioting.
Very busy. Looking at a shot of the City Hall, we see LAPD officers as well as National Guard members protecting the steps of City Hall. There's a large full-on plastic bottles tossed. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that you're willing and you're telling your deputies to continue to protect people's First Amendment rights to assemble. It's how are you going about just trying to deter people who are just opportunists, taking the chance to receive the message by going to the store and stealing items?
Well, that's right. They detract from the message overall. And you can see it looks like a stand of sorts, but we are definitely defending and honoring that First Amendment right for those that are there gathered peacefully. But we're deploying 100% now to address the people that are using that to loot. And if you notice, we don't just have the people you see behind the curtain standouts. We also have a lot of personnel out and about, targeting looters, targeting places that may be subject to DML.
And besides a presence here, how is the National Guard helping? Are they going to clear the way for us to have, up to 1,000 extra National Guard members? They arrived overnight. How are they assisting?
They're assisting in many ways. They're a force multiplier for us because we have some of our deputies who are highly trained and experienced people security force, and now we can replace them with the National Guardsmen, and then that frees them up to join our mobile field forces and put them out there and deploy them throughout the county. So that definitely helps us in a lot of ways. We can also use them to deny areas that are problematic or may already been subject to looting. So we're using them in a variety of capacities, and also down in the downtown Civic Center area, they're going to be widely deployed.
Sheriff, as we continue to see this shot here of downtown LA and City Hall, we want to ask you about the curfew again.